Okay, I think we're ready to start. Hello everyone, welcome to this afternoon session. My name is Peter Hase. I have the pleasure of moderating this session on agri-food. So I guess you're aware that we have organized the parallel sessions according to industries and areas. And I think agri-food is a very interesting area, particular if you consider that really agriculture was really the key development that led to human civilization, and nowadays agriculture is really at the forefront of adopting data-driven technologies. In this session we have 4 presentations, I hope 4, so 3 speakers have arrived so far. So hopefully 4 presentations that illustrate these developments. And our first speaker is Tobias Menne. So he is the global head of digital farming at Bayer, and he will talk about how to turn data into food. Okay, so it's my pleasure to welcome you.
Thank you. Goedendag, everyone. Tobias is my name. Currently, just that you a little bit at least know about me and who's talking. I, for the last 2 years roundabout, take responsibility for what we at Bayer call digitalization of agriculture or digital farming. Before that, I was running as Chief Technology Officer at the time one of the biggest farms on the planet in Ukraine, Maria Agro Holding. And at the time already I was very convinced that digitalization will enable a better agriculture. So we feel very proud to present the challenge today, present what we think, and also present our shortcomings, because we really need to pull this off together. The key message I want to send today, I don't want to sell anything to you. I don't want to convince you that we are an absolute fabulous organization. I want to present the challenge of a better agriculture and better food. And I want to reach out to everyone here to say, whoever has an ambition and a smart idea, to reach out and to partner. Because personally, I am not happy with the way how agriculture is organized today. I want my children to grow up in a world where we do that much better and more intelligent, with less resources and better outcomes. And we have quite some people working in our organization, but we need all of you and all the people in your organization to make things happen. So you might say, well, turning data into food, I mean, that's absolutely meaningless, because most of us have more food than we would ever need, right? I mean, food was free today, so how on earth would we need more food? Well, out of my private situation, I could share. We speak Bulgarian at home, and whenever I'm traveling in Bulgaria, I'm seeing people who are lacking the purchasing power to buy enough and healthy food for themselves, especially in a situation when food commodity prices should rise again. So I really and honestly believe that over time, when we are really approaching the famous 10 billion people on the planet, so this additional 6 times Europe, which will populate the planet over the next 30 years, that we need to produce more food. And of course, digitalization and data will need to contribute to that, to better understand for each field, for each part of the field, what ideally should be produced there. To really better understand how much seeding of a corn, for example, should be done on that field. Better understand if we can come to whole new ways of doing agriculture. For example, by saying, well, we understand this field so well that it's not necessary to plant corn all across that field, but rather mix corn and beans, for example, all with the purpose to generate more protein for the animals we want to feed for a growing planet. Many people say, well, it is nice to have more food, but what I'm as a consumer, especially as a European consumer, mostly I'm concerned about is what is the footprint of food production today on the environment? And I believe altogether we need to do a much, much better job here in the future. We need to make sure that the impact agriculture has on biodiversity, on water quality, on CO2 sequestration is much better understood and better managed than before. Now you might say, this is nicely said, especially from someone whose salary is paid by a company which is selling seeds and crop protection. How does that go together? Well, agriculture and nature and biology in general is a quite complex thing. And when we're trying to determine really, and in all honesty, what is the relationship between producing food on the one hand and the environmental footprint on the other, we really need to investigate and to research that together. Let me give an example. Overall as Europe, overall as a world, we want to live in a CO2 neutral economy by 2050. Is that right? Agriculture is a massive contributor to CO2 at the moment. Massive, around about 1/3. So what could be a solution here? Well, for example, if you look at a grower, my father is a grower, and if he does weed control, so if he makes sure that his fields are clean of weeds, he essentially has two possibilities. He could do that using some chemical stuff, and maybe some of you have followed up the discussion around glyphosate recently. He could also do some plowing, so just turn the earth up and down and really make sure that no weeds grow anymore at the surface. Let's look at these two production mechanisms, or these kind of two mechanisms really to make sure that a field is weed-free. On the one hand, if you use a chemical, if you don't do it right, you might have an impact overall on the environment. You need to make sure that you're not polluting the water in one way or the other. But on the other, if you say, well, let's plow everything, an awful lot of CO2 is released once you do plowing. So my message here is, data science in agriculture allows us to understand the impact of any agricultural measure on society and on societal costs in detail. Understanding if a certain measure is potentially impacting water quality, is on the other hand maybe protecting our CO2 balance, or the other way around. And the availability of this data and the ability of those models making this transparent will ask all of us as from a societal perspective to enter into a discussion what kind of agriculture we want. One thing's for sure, my father and on our farm, we are not working really at the optimum today. And I believe data and modeling really can improve this. Especially European consumers say, well, it's not about the amount of food, it's very much around protecting the environment and really having food in the right quality. And food quality, of course, often means that food has a good environmental footprint, that it's coming from not from afar, so it's regional, it's safe, it has a good taste, it's nutritious. And we from our side, as Bayer, we believe that we can much better help farmers understand when is the perfect time to harvest, taking not only into consideration the agronomic situation and the agronomic side, but also perfectly understanding when this tomato, when this berry would end up on a consumer's desk. So really optimizing that overall chain, not only on the field, but also going forward in the overall food chain. If you would have allowed me to show one slide, this would have been it. Oh, that worked. Usually when I say that, people are like, wake up, very good, it worked. But now that it was really right, by the way. We had a challenge as an organization. We were offering in Europe and in parts of North America a biological product to protect tomatoes from fungal disease. And when we spoke to farmers, some farmers said, well, that's the most fabulous product I've ever seen because I can sell these tomatoes now for a much higher price as organic produce. And some others said, holy crap, I will not use on earth this product again because it didn't work. And you know what made the difference? The dew drops on the tomatoes, respectively, really on the leaves of the tomatoes. Because these biological products where we are massively investing in and what really society is looking for are so much more susceptible to environmental conditions than products or more synthetic products of the past. So understanding where every drop is sitting on that one tomato, literally, is key important and is of key importance to enable farmers to do their job and to do their job well and to do their job well so that we as society say, these guys produce food which comes in decent quality, in decent quantity, with an environmental footprint which is necessary. We do a lot of more stuff, and I don't want to speak much about that, but whoever is interested, just grab one of these cards and you find everything on the net. Could you just pass it around? We have tons of data sources and a couple of products, currently sales in 10 countries, so speaking only about digital products. But one thing's for sure, we have only touched the surface of what's necessary to revolutionize agriculture. And we will never crack it alone. We understand the genetics of our seeds, we understand how our crop protection products are working, we understand nutrition in part, but all the other things we're far from. And the very reason I made my way from Cologne to here is that I want to reach out to you to say, well, we need to pull this off together. Only with your strength and with your assets and with your ingenuity will make it happen. How are we collaborating? Very different forms. We have an open innovation system. We increasingly share all of our existing data with companies who can build on it, who can innovate on it. We have programs in place for smaller companies to share data, to share infrastructure, all with the ambition to come to a better agriculture, to a more resilient agriculture, and to an agriculture where I want my really children to grow up with. You see my contact details over here. Please do reach out. We made a massive change in our organization, and we said, well, we want to enable and to respond to everyone who reaches out to our company within 24 hours, helping anyone who tries to contact our organization to find the right person and to have all the documents in place to start discussing, all within one business day. I'm inviting everyone to test us and to pull it off together. Thank you very much. Big companies have the say, very quickly fall victim of the disease of talking a lot. So I try to overcome that. And I would be very happy to use my remaining 10 minutes to get some questions, hot or cold, from your end.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, I'll pass you the mic.
I don't know, it is working. Geert-Jan van Houten from Eindhoven University. You say you want to move to a system where you produce local for local and where you, in principle, only produce goods that are really consumed by the consumers. do you foresee that we need completely different supply chains with completely different business models then? Or what is the vision of Bayer on that?
Food waste is a major issue. I mean, I think we are humble enough not to believe that we cannot solve all problems of the planet. So we can contribute to reduce that, and we are by increasing the shelf life of many of the fruits and vegetables produced with our seeds. But we need a much broader alliance, and I believe we are shy to proclaim that we could achieve that alone.
Okay.
And how will your business model look like? Like, are you going to move to a more service?
Yes.
Like seeds for service?
I love your question. Yes, we are. So we are currently, one of our current business models is to sell a jar of a weed killer. And I believe quite rightly so, some people are saying, well, hold on for a minute. We as society don't want that tons of these products are used. And you're making a buck on that, and more bucks, the more is sold. So we very much push into the direction of the servicization of that industry. So offering to you not a jar anymore, but offering a weed-free acre with partners directly around your corner. And I believe the real beauty of this servicization business model is the more we can replace any physical input by intelligence, the better for the environment. And I think what makes us very credible, it's also better for our pocket. So we don't do that with a kind of little investment just to cover our ass somewhere. We do that massively because we see a massive business opportunity because many farmers want it.
Okay, we have time for more questions if there are any. Okay.
I'm not sure, and I couldn't access the internet. Was Bayer and Monsanto in the press?
Yes, they were.
Can you explain it a little? Because I was not sure if it was Bayer and Monsanto. Because, and let's say several people have big worries about it. So I think you should talk about it.
Pleasure. Bayer overall suggested to Monsanto to come together, which is, and whatever the legal and the financial discussions, I think you all get that out of the press. Let me maybe say a word around the logic of that from Bayer's perspective. At the moment, agriculture works as such. So me as a farmer, we were buying, say, just to use that example, Monsanto seeds, and after that using Bayer's crop protection products. And these two product categories never talk to each other. So we as farmers were never really sure how those two things would perfectly go together. And I believe also you see safety margins built in both products. I think that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is that farmers don't buy seeds for the sake of buying seeds, they want to have a yield. Farmers don't buy crop protection because they want a crop protection, they want it because they want to have a clean field. But there might be more intelligent ways of achieving a clean field and a great yield beyond those physical assets. But what you really need to do to achieve that, to come to a more integrated production system, you need perfectly to understand both the seeds and the other inputs. And that's the rationale of the deal. Okay. Make sense? Okay. I very much like that question, so don't be shy of any kind of hot question. You wanted to ask a question?
Yeah. Okay.
Don't be shy.
My name is Peter. I work for the agricultural sector here in the southern part of the Netherlands. So we represent about 15,000 members. I actually had a question as well about Bayer buying Monsanto or want to buy Monsanto, but also the effects on maybe you can have on how they work right now and all the bad things that are being said about Monsanto, but also on how a small-scale farmer, not right in Europe, because if you look at outside of Europe, especially Asia or Africa, it's like 1 hectare or 3 hectares or something, or acres. How you can help those farmers and not in the way that they always have to buy stuff in order to stay alive.
Good point. Let me take on that more, say, difficult question around Monsanto first. What I experience, my personal experience. So Monsanto globally does not have a best image, right? So here is my father talking. Oh, how could you? Well, Monsanto has such a bad image, blah, blah, blah. Okay, when did you buy the last product from Monsanto, Dad? Oh, when did you met the last person from Monsanto? Oh, never. My father never bought them. We are growing the sugar beet area, so never bought. But he has a perception that bad image. Here is my experience. On Maria, when I worked in Ukraine, the people I met, not speaking about Monsanto as a big thing, but the people I met, very reflective about the mistakes they made in the past and how they communicated that. Very agronomically savvy, very collaborative. Also very listening to our concerns as a customer. So I would feel much more comfortable to speak about very concrete potential business misconduct, what I'm not aware of. And I feel a great challenge for us as an organization, as also for me as a person, to speak about this general doubtful image which is kind of associated with Monsanto. Second question, smallholders. So we are, as an organization, not embracing digitalization to sell more stuff. We are here to dematerialize our business and to come to a whole new business model. And we perfectly recognize, just by using satellite data and translating it into some application maps, which we then play to the deer, we're not really at all supporting smaller farmers. So we say, well, even looking at say, the smallest farmers you could imagine somewhere in India on the world, so we massively invested in image recognition technology to help a grower to take his smartphone out, step on his field, take a picture, and see what's happening. Millions of euros. Altogether, we're investing 200 million euros in digitalization up until 2020, only in the digitalization of agriculture. We're not advertising any product with this. It's the sole purpose for the grower to understand what's the agronomic challenge in front of him. Is it above or below a threshold? And I want to be really honest and transparent here. We are making our business model based on that data point, but we're not pushing crop protection or seeds to him. Okay.
Okay. Axel has a question.
I should have done even a shorter presentation because I'm very happy that there are many questions.
Yeah, Axel Goga, University of Leipzig. My question pertains to the data that you collect. I mean, it seems to be a huge opportunity to actually develop even more intelligent software. Do you plan to make that data open somehow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In which format and where?
Most easiest thing, let us talk in 10 minutes. Number one. Number two, visit the innovate.bayer website. Register, we have immediately in some hours a response. Third opportunity, give me a call on my mobile phone and make it happen.
Okay, any further questions?
I was really expecting some nasty questions or a Monsanto's thing, but now one friendly thing came and
Okay. So, if there are no further questions, then let's thank the speaker.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciated the format that you left a lot of time for this very interesting discussion. So our next speaker up is Sijne van der Beek.
There he is.
Yeah, from a company called CRV, which focuses on herd improvement, right? The motto is better cows, better life. I really like that. And the topic of the presentation, precision dairy farming, right?
Right.
And yeah, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. It's quite a pleasure to be here today in Eindhoven at this forum. And I'm quite pleased to share with you some thoughts about precision dairy farming. I work for CRV and in the capacity of manager of the Global Innovation Department. And my topic indeed is on next generation. I'm a breeder, so I like next generation precision dairy farming. So probably everybody knows Bayer, but I guess not a lot of people know CRV. So I will say something about that. Well, CRV, we are in the business of herd improvement. We are in the business of cattle breeding. And an important part is that we are actually a farmers co-op, founded about 150 years ago by Dutch and Flemish farmers. And we are in the business of both genetic and data solutions. Genetic solutions meaning we give insight to farmers in the genetic capacity of their animals, how good are they, and we provide them with tools, seed, semen, and insights to generate a next generation of cow which is better than the current one. And we are a farmers co-op, so we are not in the business of making money. Sure, we have to make a profit to invest in innovation, but in the end, our owners want us to generate extra added value on their farms. And the fact that we are a cooperative is also important for the discussion about data and data ownership and what to do with it. Also because in the end, our owners want to stay in business and have a good way to deal with data and get access to it. So that will be further in my talk. We'll talk about that. What does it actually mean for us as a co-op? Data and data science and knowledge is not new for us. We were created in 1874, and already then we were a data company. The reason farmers created us was that there was people from US came to Europe to buy animals, to buy cows. They were building up the national herd of the US and wanted to have the best cows to create a good herd in the US. So they came here to buy the best cows. The question, of course, was what are the best cows? So then the farmers created this herd book. There they gave the data to the herd book. The herd book could use that to give then a certificate to the farm, and that showed the value of this animal. So already at that time, data was combined, given to an organization, shared, and then used to upgrade, to give some added value, and then used by the farmer to make money. Also already at that time, the herd book got regulation and the government started to get legislation. So already at that time, actually the whole thing was solved, and maybe even better than today. So that was then, that's our history. And so today CRV is a global acting company, and a lot of our business is about collecting data to use it to breed and to use it to generate insights for our customers. So on this slide, you see a lot of people from CRV, actually, our field staff, that go to farms to measure stuff, which we use then again to give back to the farmers knowledge. So that's today. On various fields, you see people, cows here. But of course, this is changing rapidly. On dairy farms, like in the whole of agriculture, you more and more get new ways of measuring. Sensors are coming. So you have sensors in the cow, on the cow, in the barn, and more also you have sensors in the robots. Milking robot now is there. It's a common thing in dairy farming to have a milking robot, and also robotized feeding is coming. So then it's actually, that's the new way farmers manage their herds. In those robots there's also a lot of sensors, of course, measuring anything. For CRV, the big difference between this picture and the previous one is that on this picture there are no CRV employees anymore collecting data. And that has a profound effect on our business. In today still, and definitely in the past, we collected data, so we were in the loop. We had the data, and we had some control. Here, it's the farmer who has the control, but also, increasingly, the guy who sells the robot has the control. because he sells the robot, but not all the data which is collected there, and definitely not all the intelligence. So for us, of course, us as a company founded and based on the principles of collecting data and using that to generate insights and make a buck, this is a big development we have to adapt to. And also for the farmers, because they, yeah, what is this robot company going to do with my data? So that is the sensor part. The other part we are working in is genomics. We collect an awful lot of data on DNA. We get DNA samples, get DNA profiles, and use that. That's happening everywhere in society. The biggest example, of course, is humans. It's immense, the amount of data collected. But also here you see that on this multi-million project in England, they ask people to participate and give their data, because genomic data without clinical data is meaningless. So CRV, in the end, as a company, we combine all kinds of data with genomic data and use that to help our farmers. And those farmers, more and more, they are not the farmers which you see on the advertisements and on the milk package, which are romantic, etc. No, they are highly trained professionals with growing farms, which need to be more efficient, more transparent, provide better quality, and they actually, the modern generation loves to have all kinds of sensors and tools to assist to manage their farms. So they embrace it and love it. And we, as a genetic company, we love to add there the genomic dimension, so also have that information to make life of the farmers better. So what do we expect will happen now in the whole field? Well, actually, we think that what is emerging is sort of an ecosystem of platforms. And so around the farmers, there will be a finance platform popping up, there will be cattle management platform, there will be crop platforms, there will be milking, all kinds of platforms. And we really think that eventually, not today and maybe not next year, but eventually there will be free flow, flow of data for a fair price. So data will be abundantly available and platforms will be developing. We as a company today, and other companies do the same, generate all-inclusive software. So we try to sell a farmer one package which includes everything, so that we have, if you say it negatively, we have lock-in. That will go away. Nobody will have an all-inclusive solution anymore. Now you will have the platforms, and all kinds of people will generate small, focused solutions based on the data which they take from the cloud. And there will be applications of all kinds of suppliers. And basically there will be fighting for space on the smartphone. So who has the best apps? So we have to fight for our position on this smartphone. So of course we hope that the top ones are from CRV, but there will be also a lot of other apps. And every farmer will create his own collection of apps he will use and will be flexible in that. That's the future, but today still a lot of data just still remains on the farm and is not opened up. And that's a big challenge. So within the Netherlands, the main co-ops, CRV, Cattle Improvement Co-op, Agrifirm, Feed Co-op, and Friesland Campina, the main dairy processor, they are all farmer co-ops. They joined forces to create what they call smart dairy farming. And the whole aim of smart dairy farming is to create a platform which facilitates that farmers give access to their data, that it's not really put in a database, but it's opened up, that they will generate a central authorization scheme that farmers can say, this company, this company, this company, and this company can have access to my data. Then everybody can go to this platform if they have access, based on price or whatever, how to organize it, and then go to that platform and access the data. And what we then see happening is that we get a sort of B2B platform where any company can access the data and generate, using his or her knowledge, generate algorithms, insights, solutions for either farmers or for other companies. So there will also be a lot of business between those parties. And we as a company hope to be a big player there because we are a data company. And from that, apps are generated. And that then are the apps that farmers use to manage the farms. So this is our vision. This is where we work on to generate a system where farmers still have control, that their data is used in a good way, and that also companies can in a reasonable way cooperate, share, and make money. So we as a company then aspire to be a big player there and add a lot of stuff and make money. And we think we can do it because we have this huge history. We have all the genomics data, and we can add the sensor data. And we have a lot of experience in cloud solutions. And well, I tell the people in my team always, well, now is the time we actually have to work for our money. I mean, in the past we have the data and we could do something with it. Now, having data, everybody has data. Now, only if we really add meaning and value and insights, then farmers will cooperate with us and buy our products. So that is also our ambition and vision, that as a farmers co-op, that in the end we hope to create a situation around data that the owners of the animals and the farms decide, that they together create those platforms which are accessible, create the revenue streams that everybody can participate, and that in the end we do stuff which is good for our member farmers to generate a better situation for the future. So that's the way we look at it within CRV. Thank you.
Can you put this on? Okay, thanks. You had a question? Yes. Let me give you the mic.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm Graciela from the TUE Eindhoven. I have a question about this idea because it really is an inspiring idea because I'm also from the platform generation. How are you going to make sure that you have enough supply of data and demand of data analysis companies there to get this market started? Or like, what's the main challenge there for you and how are you going to solve it?
Well, thank for the question because you summarized the challenge. That's to get the wheel, to get the momentum. So that was actually the reason why the CEOs of those co-ops came together and said, well, we have to create this platform and we have to put our weight behind it to go for it. So that will be one part, that those farmer co-ops who represent a lot of the farmers in the Netherlands team up, and they will start the talks with all kinds of companies who have to provide the data. So that's one. Those farmer co-ops really will take the lead and get into the talks with everybody. Please, in the interest of farmers, let's create a way to share the data in a way that also everybody doesn't feel threatened, because that's the big challenge. Nobody wants to give away data for free. And the next thing is that those companies also now invest in generating the first applications. So, and that will be investing. We will not make money, but we have to generate the first applications around precision feeding, about precision rearing of calves, to get meaningful results for farmers, so that they say, okay, there is a real value there.
You're going to do that first yourself?
The three co-ops together will do it. We do it ourselves, and in a period of 1 or 2 years, and then it will open up once we have proven that it works. And we participate actually a lot with TNO there. I see TNO people here, so they help us making it really work. We have a nice idea, but it also should work.
You basically said. Oh, there are people over there. All right. You basically said that only if you add meaning to your data will the farmers really cooperate. Could you expand upon that? What do you mean by adding meaning to your data, and how do you plan to do so?
No, for instance, we as a company get data from all kinds of farmers, and the simplest thing we can do is benchmark. That's okay. You have cows producing 8,000 kilograms of milk on average, and you feed 20 kilograms of feed per cow, and your neighbor is giving the same feed, but his cows produce 9,000. But also we can add, okay, and this is actually the things we see also this and this and this, and that we think is actually the reason your farm is performing worse or better than the other one. We also will do a lot in predictive. So it's all about predicting the future. So we will see the patterns in the data and then predict, okay, we actually think the next half year your production will go up. We see that everywhere. Or your production has a risk to go down given what we see. Stuff like that.
So that's one result of analytics. So basically you're not adding the data, you're basically analyzing the data according to a fixed schema that you already have. Do you see any kind of any kind of plus in adding the semantics directly to the data and then allowing for any multimedia of applications that use those semantics directly in the data?
I don't know if I understand your question correctly, but for us it will already be a big challenge to combine all the sources of data, which is exploding. I mean, until now we had simple data, and now it will come from any place there will be data, which we have to make sense of and combine it into meaningful predictive analytics. That will be our first challenge, I think.
So basically explicit semantics like RDF in data and the like, would that play a role?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
Explicit semantics like RDF in data and the like, would they play a role in what you're planning?
Our first planning is to get the data and do the simple data science. I mean, luckily the most used data science technique is still linear regression, so.
Thank you. My question is not about data analytics. In fact, in this precise application domain, my question is about the typology of data and what are the sources of your data you are using. Are they only the data provided from the fields, I mean, from IoT, or do you use or plan to use open data from, I mean, other sources? I mean, could you develop more and provide more precision about the kind of data you are using and that typology, please?
Well, the bulk of data used today is still traditional data. So what I showed, we collect a lot of data. That's still the core for us as a company of our data. We go and measure how much milk does a cow give, etc. So the traditional data is still the core. Then more and more sensor data is added, like the most telling application is that we use activity measurement, so a pedometer on the cow that measures the activity of the animal, and that's then added to our data set, and we use it to see is something about the fertility status of the animal. Then we get some data from other companies. There is a lot of exchange of data. For instance, all the results of soil analysis goes also to our database, stuff like that. So it's traditional data, sensor data, which is growing and growing, and data exchange with all kinds of companies or organizations that collect data on farm size, on soil analysis, on data, DNA analysis.
So are you facing any veracity problems?
That it's that they're getting too big. You mean? Yeah. So we tackle that by not using all the data, but slowly building it up and see how we can add stuff.
I think we have to go first.
Thank you. I just had a question about where in the platform clouds are you in? Are you just now one of the smaller clouds, or are you in the cooperation between the corporations, the bigger cloud? And if you're not, who has to take up the bigger cloud? Who has to arrange it in the Netherlands, for instance?
Well, the smart dairy cloud will be a cloud centered around collecting all the data which is collected on farms with sensors. That will be hopefully a good big cloud. But I'm sure there will also be a big cloud from the crop part, which part will be is even bigger. There will probably be a cloud from accountants who create something. And I think everybody's still now working very much to make their own cloud happen. But soon then initiatives need to start to create interfaces between those clouds, because else farmers will say, well, I don't want to have the burden to go to all those providers, then it will not work. But I think at this moment there is nobody who takes the lead there, because everybody's too busy with their own cloud yet.
We should. Do you think or CRV?
That's a good question. Well, CRV not. We are too small. So we, from our domain, Friesland Campina, if they talk with Rabobank and maybe with LTO, then we are talking.
Another critical question. Just before, I found 2 articles for Tobias Menne about that farmers in India and Monsanto. I sent them to him. Maybe he can answer it at the end. When I look not on, let's say, data acquisition itself is good. There I have no problem. What I see when I look on the milk farms, I'm coming from Germany, one thing where I have some worries, they increased the production capability. That means the farmers got subsidies to increase the production to build new stallings. I'm not sure if this is completely allowed, because let's say normally I understand it's only you have to be neutral when you use subsidies. When I grew up on cows, let's say 20, 30 years ago, the production of a cow was in the range of 6,000 liter milk, maybe even less. And the life expectancy was around, I would say, 10 years, maybe even older. And now what I see is the production is going up to 10,000 or 12,000 liter. The life expectancy, or let's say until the cow is economically usable, is maybe 5 or 6 years. I could be a little incorrect because I'm not a farmer. And but what I see there is how should this go? And the next point is, when we look to South America, the whole soya stuff is coming. Could be used maybe better directly feeding the people. It's going in the production here in Europe. And on the other side, we have a big overproduction. When I see Africa, we sell this stuff to farmers in other countries, other continents, and let's say they can't produce because let's say they can't compete. It's not, I don't want to push you in the wrong direction. Data acquisition is good, but what's, as company, your goal?
Well, our goal as a company is to make our to make sure that our members make money. So the farmers of the Netherlands and Flanders, and they are faced. You give the one side of the discussion, which is very clearly there. The critical side of the society who says, "Why are you doing this?" And the other side of the society, of course, is, "Okay, nice, but just give me cheap food." And our farmers have to deal with that, and have to maneuver, and it's not an easy one. The good thing about the topic of today, data science, data acquisition, data, is that it actually helps to create this balancing act. If you do it in a proper way and you have the proper goals, you can more easily balance both the increased desire to have a good product and the need to have an efficient product. Of course, I will say we will make that happen.
Okay. My question, I'm here.
Sorry.
You said that you are collecting data from different countries all over the world about farming. That means that this data is described using different terms. And my question is, there are standards that make it easy for you to integrate this data let's say, cows and farms, species can be described in different ways. And how do you address this issue?
Well, that's of course a very big problem always with new data types and everything popping up. The way we try to deal with this is that there are, at least in the Netherlands, there is a called foundation dedicated to this exchange of data between companies, etc., which generates the fields. Okay, this is the standard, and makes agreements between parties. Okay, this is how we exchange data. And that there is also international fora for doing that, but they are slowly moving. So a lot of our people are day in, day out working on connecting data and creating interfaces just to make meaning of it.
Okay, thanks for the great questions and the great answers. So let's thank our speaker again. Our next presenter is Heike Bach. She's from a company called VISTA that she founded, and that company deals with applications on remote sensing, in agriculture, and very much looking forward to the presentation on big data for smart farming services.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my talk will fit, I think, very nicely together with the talk of Tobias Menne before. It gave the wider view, and I want to dig a little bit deeper and show some examples. So I think we will not repeat too much, which is maybe quite nice. Everybody knows Bayer, we heard this. Nobody knows VISTA, that's clear, because we are really a small company. I started the company more than 20 years ago. We are just 15 geodata scientists that didn't exist when we started it, but we are actually this. And we are situated in Munich. So the name is Remote Sensing and Geoscience. But what we are doing is we're using satellite data and modeling, environmental modeling, for two applications. One is in hydrology and the second in agriculture. And when we started, like a spin-off from the University of Munich, when I started it, we did a lot of research and development, really research project where people asked us for specific topics. And now during the years, we really succeeded to develop operational services out of this. And they, again, cover both areas, the hydrology, which is, for example, we monitor snow cover of all the Alps for flood forecast centers in Europe, or we do flood monitoring for insurances, that is an operational service. We do runoff forecast, and we also do hydropower production forecast for renewable energy traders, just an example. On the agricultural side, our applications are yield predictions, agricultural statistics, like, for example, we work a lot in precision farming, that's more the theme of today, and also in certification purposes, sustainable agriculture, for example, organic farming. And for precision farming, we developed a portfolio, a product portfolio. It's called Talking Fields. We say the fields are talking to us, and we know how to listen. We started this 10 years ago, and our idea of this at the beginning looked like that. We have a lot of data available. We have Earth observation sensors, we have communication facilities, we have satellite navigation, information coming from in situ sensors, and we have farm management information systems, and we have to integrate all this and provide information service to the farmers. At that time, 10 years ago, big data did not exist as a word yet, or I was not aware of it, so that is a new term in it. And we also were not aware of smart mobile devices. We just thought of mobile handies or so. So a little bit has changed, but the concept is still not very much different. And why do we need precise farming or smart farming? I want to introduce it a little bit. Look at this picture of a field. It shows you a field is not homogeneous. It has very different places where we have mostly different soil properties. Then the plant reacts differently. You can see here there are still green parts and brown parts. The farmers know that since 100 years or longer, but they didn't know really how to react on this in a specific way. So that is the one thing. The other thing is that we are now at the stage that we had before. We had our normal tractor system going along the way and following more or less straight lines. Now we have auto steering with very precise navigation that allows the farmers to go in very strict lines, that reduces the amount of lines they have to go, reduces oil time for the person to work there. So it's environmental friendly because you don't cover the soil too often, but it's also economically very meaningful for the farmers. That means that almost every farmer nowadays, when he buys a new tractor, he also buys these facilities. That means we have now precision navigation applicable to European farmers. And now we are at the stage, we know that we have heterogeneity in the field and we have the potential to apply it in a site-specific way. So the two things come together, and now we need to have services to transfer now also the knowledge how and where to treat it correctly. So we say we move forward from the term precision farming, which is mostly about clear, straight lines of traffic, into the term smart farming. That means we find the best combination of knowledge and technology to offer solutions to farmers. And they must manage their resources efficiently and also economically, but at the same time in an environmental friendly way. What we all heard from you, we really have to bet better agriculture in future for Europe and the world. How we are doing this, making it very precise. If you look at this, presently we have a conventional farming with the current yield, but mostly farmers don't achieve the best yield they could get. There is a higher yield potential on their farm, so we can observe a yield gap. And there are now several techniques that we can use in site-specific farming to reduce this yield gap. One thing is fertilization. It's clear if you put more clever as a fertilizer on the field, you can improve your yield. You can also apply smart plant protection, precise navigation I already mentioned. Another step is very important, crop simulations. You have to know at this location which is the potential of yield that you could grow. What is the weather conditions there? Do you have to adapt the variety of your crops or even the change from sugar beet to something else? So all this can be predicted from crop simulations and used for the farmers. Also smart seeding is becoming more and more importantly, which seeds to place where, but also the amount of seeds. In high yield potential zones, you can put denser seeds than in low yield potential zones. We also cover the theme biodiversity. If I have to put 5% of my area for greening purposes and put it out of production, where are these areas? Of course, they should be at the places where we have low yield potential, and at the same time, they should be close to environmental sensitive areas that you have a connection of biotopes. There's also smart irrigation. Irrigation and fertilization must go together. If you have not enough water for the fertilizer, it will not happen the other way around. So it's really a coming together of these two issues. And all together, everything has to do with weather and weather forecast, so we also need this. And all these little pieces together improve our yield. And now the challenge is that we need to understand to which level we can achieve this. We cannot go to the uppest limit. Then we will ruin our groundwater. So we have sustainability constraints. And this is still, I think, really a matter of research where we need a lot of integrative research and many people working there, how to apply it in the best way, fertilizer, irrigation and so on, to make it zero emission agriculture. We have example of all these different pieces done in our work, and many of them are with contribution of satellite data. Look at satellite data here. That's just an image. Our motto is go from image to information. How does it look like? I give you examples. For example, here we provide to our farmers yield potential map, telling them where is low yield potential and higher yield potential in the field. This is done by harvesting satellite data of the last 5 to 10 years. That means we start with 200 satellite images, terabyte of data, then finding out which are the ones that we can really use, for example, without clouds. There is always problems with cloud in our cases. So maybe in this time span, we have 50 satellite images available that are of relevance for the farmer. And from this, we do, again, data mining and come just up from all this data to just one map where the plant that shows his biomass distribution during the years shows persistent patterns. That is a specific technique to extract them, and that really gives yield potential information. And this information is very helpful for all of these measures that the farmers has. And we also delineate different zones there that they can put their soil probing, the in situ measurements, in these zones where we have higher or lower yield, that they are more representative for the site characteristic of his field. This example I want to repeat with the field that I showed you at the beginning with the large heterogeneity. You see it on the right side. On the left side, you see the Tocco field base map, the yield potential map that we use to generate from these 10-year satellite images. And we see the same patterns. These are the lime-rich zones in reddish color with low yield potential, where we also saw it on this specific photograph here. And now the farmers can react, and he's doing organic fertilization specifically on these strips where we have low water holding capacity. He can react now. He doesn't have to distribute it all over his field. I think that is a quite important step. Another example, we had a farmer here where we saw in our yield potential base map, there is always on the left side a lower biomass that we can observe. And in the year 2013, we also showed in our yield forecast that we also offer, we showed him again this year where you have lower yields there. So why is that? And he visited the field and looked why this is the case. And he found out that his drainage system is not working anymore. So it was too wet for the crops. So now he had the decision support to tell him, okay, lower yield, I reduce my income by so and so much money, I invest in a drainage system. And the next year after he did this, we make a success control from satellite, and we could see the field is much homogeneous later on. So you can really do also success control with satellite images, and for this you use, of course, very recent, up-to-date satellite images. And this brings me to the next set of products that we offer to farmers. It's monitoring of up-to-date crop conditions. So if you have an image from today, next day you will get the results from us on the crop conditions that you can use for fertilization, plant protection, and also irrigation purposes. And we even go a step further. We just do not only observations, we also assimilate this information in crop growth model that allows us to get yield out of the simulations. This is now yield in tons per hectare. Here you have to do a lot of simulation, exercise, data assimilation, a lot of data number crunching. But it is important to do so. You can imagine if you have a sugar beet, you will not see the sugar beet's yield under the ground from satellite. You really need a complex model to understand it and use the satellite assimilated in it to get really to good yield estimates. I want to explain it a little bit more in detail how it works. So we have here observations from satellite that gives you the development of the biomass during the year. Normally it's sufficient to have 4 images during the growing season to see the crop growth. And we combine this now with meteorological data and with the crop growth model, who has all information on digital elevation model, soils, and so on is available. And from this we can derive satellite-based modeled yield distributions. And most important is if we do these simulations, how accurate are we with this? And here you can see this result. If you later on do a mapping with a combine harvester and do using the data and compare this, you get a very similar pattern of yield distribution as was simulated before. So we are not only very good in getting the same patterns, but also in the right amount of yield. So we have the same accuracy in our method as the combine harvester, the in situ measurement has. We have analyzed this for many years and many application cases. So you are already quite far with these techniques. Now we are at the stage presently that we have a game changer in the whole system. It's a sensor from the Copernicus set of instruments, and this is especially Sentinel-2. I don't know whether everybody has heard of it yet. So it's a satellite that is in orbit since last year. It's operationally provided by the European Commission and ESA free of charge, available to everybody, available globally in an excellent quality. We have 10 meter spatial resolution. We have images every 5 days globally, and the spectral measurements are better than what you could get presently on most other satellite data available. So it's really superb for agricultural applications. And the data is also it's certain that we have the data available for the next 25 years. If you build a service, you must be sure that the service can run also in the next 20 years. And the European Commission gives investment and has already committed billions of euro to assure that this service is continued after also the next year. So that's really an excellent situation. So now we can really make services available everywhere globally in a cheap price, because the data itself does not cost anything more. For example, somebody asked us in Egypt, we just can go into the data bank there and grab the image of the irrigated fields here in Egypt. And just to show you what we can extract from this now very easily is for 1 month how the crops develop on this center pivot irrigation system. You can see here the leaf area during 4 different dates, just 1 week in between all the time. So now we can go really frequent in monitoring purpose, and we can use it for irrigation optimization, for pesticide application, and so on. The good thing with Sentinel, to map leaf area was also possible with other satellites, clear. We have done this before, it's not something completely new. That is, for example, shown here with the Sentinel images. But what is new now with the satellite is, because it has more spectral bands, we can now also observe very well the chlorophyll absorption. And chlorophyll is very close connected to nitrogen. So now we can see different patterns between leaf area and chlorophyll. Before, it was often not really differentiable with only a few couple of bands, spectral bands. And now, for example, you can see here in this field, here the different manure application only in this field, and that is pressed now with higher chlorophyll content. You can really see the different fertilization measures in your analysis system. That is now really a big step with Sentinel-2. So that means it's the ideal sensor also for fertilization optimization. How does it work, and why is it necessary to do this site-specific fertilization? I give you one example. That is the present status quo, how to do fertilization. Is you have on the one side, you have a map of yield potential, how much you could produce on this specific place. And you have the presently observed biomass just from the day before, for example. And then you tell the tractor, when he goes the line, you tell him at each point whether he should put 30 kilograms of nitrogen or 90 kilograms of nitrogen on this place. You do really give the plant what it needs at each place. That is really the status quo of high quality fertilization. And this results in, you can now test it, whether it works and really helps the environment. We tested it, and we found out we can increase the yield slightly, even in a high performing system like in Germany, where we already are very hard at the top already. But we can increase it slightly, and at the same time reduce the input of nitrogen. So that is sounds like a contradiction, but by giving it in the right way, the distribution, you can reduce nitrogen impact and increase yield. So we have altogether about 4.5% in this example, in general between 3 and 4% increase of efficiency. And so we really can see that it's a big improvement here. But when we do this, we cannot do this alone, that is also clear. We have now used our methods in our smaller environment, but now we have integrated it in a larger system together with the larger players in the agriculture system, like John Deere. They have a platform, so we are using platforms that are already available, and we don't invent something new. They have the platforms available. We provide our maps from simulation and satellite images into it. We have farm management information services. We give advice how to fertilize and how to really manage it on the sprayers, how to optimize the fertilization, that the farmer has a seamless application of his fertilization. And this connected nutrient management also won the gold medal of the Agritechnica last year. Okay, I come to the conclusion. Earth observation, environmental data, digital maps, meteorological data, all these mesh data are all ingredients of big data stream that can serve for smart farming, and they are offering economic and ecological benefits to farmers. Now we have massive amounts of free and open satellite images that allow monitoring the crop growth. We have a lot of algorithmic developments and environmental modeling tools in place, as well as the right ICT infrastructure like the cloud systems. Now the stage is set for making these smart farming services available, not only for the large players, the big farms, because now we can also provide it to very small farms. That's a big advantage that it is now possible. Okay, and the field, I like it looks now, big data technology for smart farming is shown here, how we provide services to our farmers from all kinds of information sources coming together. Okay, I think that is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have perhaps time for one quick question. Yeah, okay.
What can you tell about the acceptance of the farmers of this new type of technologies in Germany?
When farmers see that they have a benefit of it, they are also willing to pay for a service, and the best acceptance is that people paying for a service. I think that is the best guarantee that we do a good service. So it's really, I think the main point is it's not only about ecology. We don't say we reduce your nitrogen input, but at the same time, he knows he will get profit out of it, because no farmer really wants to put fertilizer in the groundwater. Do you want to spend money like this, throwing it away? They don't want to do it. So we have the same motivation to make it environmental friendly and to save the money of the farmers. And the same is with pesticides. And they are also aware if they put too much on it, and the pressure from the public is coming more and more that they are not allowed to use these methods anymore, then they know they have to be more careful with it, and these techniques allow it in an easy way. So I think the acceptance is in general quite high. Of course, there is a barrier because they have to pay for the service. So and it intrudes step by step. But I also think with the platforms that are now slowly growing, they are not completely accepted yet by the farmers, at least not in Germany. They are starting and growing. But with these platforms, I think we will have very good multiplicators.
Okay, thank you very much. We have to move on to the next presentation. So thanks again to Ms. Bach for this interesting presentation. Our last presenter is Jakob van den Borne. Again, presentation on precision farming with potatoes. I leave the stage to you.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you something about precision farming, the practices that I did the last 10 years on my farm. I've got an arable farm here on the borderline between Belgium and the Netherlands. We've got 4 people working on our farm. We grow more than 140 different fields with an average size of 3 hectares and also an average of 6 corner points. Therefore, we have a high overlap. And the first thing we did was kill the overlap by the meaning of using GPS technology for section control and straight driving, so reducing overlap. My first question is actually, do you know what precision farming is? Do you guys know what the definition of precision farming is? Because there's a lot of talking about precision farming, but actually a lot of people don't know the exact definition. And I think the exact definition of precision farming is doing on the right time, on the right place, doing the right thing. So it's all about time, location and application. This is important because a lot of farmers, but also people that do advisory, are also thinking that some of the technologies we need, GPS and section control, is precision farming, but actually they are tools to do so. So how old would it be? I found an agenda of my grandfather, and actually he wrote it down every day, what he did, where he did it, and why he did it, and actually he was a precision farmer as well. So we developed a cycle, a precision farming cycle, and this cycle is, in this case, it's all about growing potatoes. And we first start by mapping all the fields. So we have to know where all the fields are. If you have more than 150 different fields of potatoes, it will be a challenge to drive to the right one and do the right thing. The second thing, my grandfather wrote it down in his nice agenda, but a lot of farmers are not having time or not doing so anymore. So we need an application that can do crop registration very easily. And that it looks like that's easy to do, but it's quite hard because we have to register lots and lots of information. But we think we can build an application that is as fun as Facebook and Twitter and will have the same beep. So if you walk into the field, you get the beep, but it isn't the message. No, it will be the question, what are you going to do here? And just in 2 clicks, you can register what you're going to do. So second step is then the soil scan. We invested a lot in soil scanning technology, and we purchased an EM device. It's an electrical conductivity sensor. It measures the soil conductivity in 4 different depths. If we're going to look at those different depths, I zoom into the 0.5 meter deep and 1 meter deep, and we are now able, by data analyzing, that we can use the meter deep information for making yield potential data. And actually that isn't that hard. If you are on a sandy soil like we have, the wetter zones are the most yielding in a dry season. And in this case, the dry zones are more yielding in a wet season. We also have the shallow measurement, and in the shallow measurement we see striping, and this striping is all about compaction. And compaction is actually one of the #1 problems in agriculture. So after that's done, we have another big thing. It's all about where are we going to drive. We do have GPS systems for driving, but they don't have a system for calculating where to drive. And it's quite a challenge to drive on specific fields. The common Dutch fields are nice and square, but in my region, also in Belgium, we don't have square fields. So we need an algorithm for calculating the optimal route. If we can do that, I believe controlled traffic farming will be one of the future things to do. And controlled traffic farming is actually farming on a specific path and never leaving that path again, so that you have sites. You have subsoils where never was driven, where you never drive again. Therefore, your biological life in that soil will be 10 times as big as it was by driving, and it will gain you yield, lots of yield, 7 to 15% more. We're not there yet, but if we can calculate the optimal route, I think this would be the next step. So then we are going into springtime. The first thing we're going to do is fertilize, and we use a compost fertilizer for adapting, for optimizing the yield potential of the soil. Again, we use the soil scan, the conductivity scan, for making variable rate maps. And at the end, the compost is variable spreaded only on the zones where it's needed the most or where it's the most affordable to do. After that, we're going to plow or cultivate the soil. And again, we need to know on which field we're going to start. And if you ask a farmer, he always say, I start on the driest one. And I say, how do you know? Yeah, I just know. Yeah, I can't know because I have more than 150 fields. So I need a system, and the system again is scanning the soils, arranging the data, and then knowing where to start. After plowing, we're going to plant potatoes. We do that on 3 different ways. We're acting with data on 3 different ways. The first step is planting a variable beside our spraying paths, because we lose a lot of field by lay down tracks for driving. On a 400 hectares of potatoes, we are using 5.5%. That's 22 hectares that we just rented for driving over. That's a yield loss of 22 hectares. But the zone besides the spraying path, or the plants there get more light, more nutrients, more water, so have a higher yield potential. Therefore, we plant them shorter, and we can completely compensate the yield loss. The opposite thing is also true. We've been able to calculate shadow zones with 3D data, with tree height data, and therefore can calculate the shadow zones. And in the shadow zones, we're going to plant the potatoes more spacey, so they get more light, more nutrients, and more water per plant. And again, we spare on seeds and have a higher quality at the end. Then you can also variable plant on soil conductivity. So if you know the potential of the zone, you could plant shorter or less shorter. The only problem then is you have to look into the future, because I didn't know that this would be a very wet year. And in front of my planting season, I have to decide, is the dry spot the most profitable, or is the wet spot the most profitable? So it works fine on clay and loamy soils, but on my sandy soils, it's all a gamble. Then we're going to start the summer, and the first thing in the summer is protecting my crop against diseases. I use a system for that. It's a software company that predicts when the disease will strike, and just before the strike we're going to act with a sprayer, and the sprayer has data what he did on which time point and which position, and this data is then fitted back into the system to check if the spraying was successful. We also irrigate a lot, not this year. We use sensors for that, and those are soil sensors. The sensors are placed within the fields. The biggest question then is where to place it. Of course, we have the soil scan again, and we can look at the most common place in the field. The sensor will give me an idea of when to irrigate, but also how much to irrigate. The biggest question then is if we combine that with the soil scan Then we have to know what to do where. And as you can see, the blue spots will be wettish. The red or purple spots are the dry spots. If you ask a farmer, what are you going to do? They all tell you, I'm going to add more water on the dry spot. And that's wrong, because a dry spot is dry because it cannot hold water. So you have to do less more frequently. To do so, we believe we can build a system that works with the height of the field, the groundwater level, then you have a calculated water level in your root zone, combine that with the conductivity of the field and one sensor. We believe we could calculate the water stress on plot level, so within the fields. Good. After that, we're going to collect data with sensors. We have mounted sensors on our spraying equipment. We have 6 sensors on 44 rows, so we can we can spray 44 rows, and 6 of them are measured. We found out that that's actually not that good of data set, because you don't know if the row is representative of the whole area you can spray. So now this data is fit in a cloud. So this is the sensor data of my system. Then the cloud will recognize if this field is still doable, if this meets my regulations, my growing model, and if it is not, then we're going to check the satellite data. Actually, the same story that my colleague in front told us. So we try to get the highest resolution satellite imagery, and then we have a better idea of what to do. Then we can look at the data and find out why specific zones are not producing. So we also fly, when the satellite data is not available, we fly drones. What was mentioned is not always cloud-free here in the Netherlands. 80% of the time we have clouds. So when we need extra data, we fly a drone. And in the past, those drones could only measure biomass, as you can see here. But nowadays, we've got new sensors, new equipment, that we also can measure chlorophyll content, and therefore have a very high resolution of data that we actually can calculate back to the nitrogen content of the crop. All the data that we gather is quite nice, but without a good calibration, it's useless. So the only way to work with this data is to get into the field and make measurements of your crop. And actually, we do so. We started having a probing model for 4 years. So we went to every field. So all the 140 fields are probed every second week on all the parameters that you can see here. Those data sets is then combined for finding out if we can calibrate our technology, calibrate the sensors, but also make new growing models and fertilization models. So the fertilization is done with an online system. We can measure in front what the biomass and the nitrogen content will be, but we also use the yield potential data at the back. It's a map overlay system. So when a sensor sees a good crop, normally the sensor will shut down the fertilization and will do less. And when the sensor sees a bad crop, it will be extra fertilized. But mostly that's wrong, because the good zones are in the high yielding area and the bad zones are in the low yielding area. We want to extra feed the good zones and not just underfeed or not feed the bad zones at all. So on the sprayer, same story. You can do it with fertilizer, but you also can do it liquid fertilization. And as you can see here, this is an animation. We can combine 2 different liquids on a site-specific place. So we're very accurate in applying the nutrients, but also the chemicals only where it's needed. Good, then we are in the autumn. We're going to start the harvest, and the harvest time is equipped with yield mapping equipment, so we can actually map all the yields. If we then look at some yield data, we can see very high differences. At the bottom in red, we can see that we have a yield of 20 tons a hectare. Here, dark green is a yield of more than 80 tons a hectare. So the same field, same fertilization scheme, same irrigation, same seeds, everything the same, has a yield gap of 60 tons a hectare. The biggest question then, of course, is why? And in this case, the lower part has a very low conductivity, very sandy soil, of only 20 centimeters rootable crop, and here it's a very wettish soil with more than 80 centimeters root zone. We also measure the speed, the elevation, and even the load number, so we exactly know which load was harvested where. So at the end, can we predict yield potential? I think we can, and we can also do that on soil conductivity. Here you can see a map of our soil sensors with very low conductivity zone and very high conductivity zones. If we lay over the yields, you can actually see the complete same pattern. Thus we are able to use soil conductivity for predicting yields. Biggest question now is, how would this map look like if I'm a robo-farmer in 10 years, if I even can change the weather? What do you think? A lot of farmers tell me then it will be all green, but that's of course wrong. Here, there's growing 30 tons, but maybe all the money of the world I can reach the 60 tons, but already 80 tons growth at the back, and with a small investment we can do 120 tons there. So I think the people in the Netherlands, the farmers in the Netherlands, all have the flat wall strategy. They want to have homogeneous crops, so they want to have one level of yield. But actually, that is not the good way to do it. You have to work with Mother Nature, not against it. So at the end, storage, very important. We have to keep our products, but also have to have traceability. So we're working on an indoor navigation system for checking where all the fields are in my storage room, but also using technology to get the cheapest power possible. So working on the global electrical power market and predict when it's cheap, we're going to extra ventilate. So that's what that could look like. So that's the complete cycle of precision farming on our farm. I also have a digital farm on my website. If you click the bottom, you can play with the data yourself. At the end, you also can do some nice things for precision farming. I once tried to kill a grassland, and I thought maybe I don't gonna spray all parts of the grassland. Are there any questions?
Okay. We do have some time for questions. Okay.
You have 140 acres, you say?
Fields.
Fields. Potatoes, you can only grow them
once in 4 years.
Once in 4 years. So you rent a lot of fields? Or
I rent 80% of all the lands.
So when you rent new pieces of land, do you first do an analysis of the land?
Yeah, the first thing I'm going to do is drive there with my scanner. For free, for them.
For the
crop owner. It's free. I do the data, the acquisition, and if they want the data, they have to keep renting to me or hiring to me.
Okay, smart. And the guy who rents the field to you gets more money when you see this is a very good field?
No, I pay less than my colleagues, but I have something extra. And that extra is actually data of their crop, of their fields.
Okay. Good business.
Okay, do we have more questions? Okay.
Jacob, at the end of your presentation, you told us that you saw this match between yield and conductivity. But there you still have got the problem to predict weather.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem now. Eh? I couldn't predict that we had 360 millimeters of rain last month.
So what does this match help you? How does it help you?
So better forecast, you mean, or the match? No, the match between conductivity and yield now is also profiting us, because we don't actually know what the wet parts are. Now you can see it easily because they are flooded. But normally that's harder to see, and we could actually not fertilize those plots because we already know there is a low yielding potential in a wet season like this. So using the potential maps is quite a key to what I'm doing, and getting good information, good data about it. We found out the conductivity map is quite useful.
Okay, we are now at the end of our session. Please let's thank the speaker again, and also the previous speakers.
We introduced. So we thought, as all the people in this room, that data affects every part of human activity and life, that we were worth having a session to push the envelope, push the boundaries. So to look at things beyond the sectors that we've been looking at traditionally in this conference. So, and I'm pleased to say that we have quite an eclectic collection. So we move from refugees to monetization and data markets, to grass, and then to art. So the first speaker is Stef, who's a senior partner at Deloitte. He's joined Deloitte 15 years ago. Before he was at Anderson Consulting, CSC, and Noble Star. His current responsibilities include leading the technology industry clients and markets, as well as the high-tech competence center in Eindhoven. He also wears another hat, where he's an active volunteer for War Child in Amsterdam, and related to this, he leads the Connect for Purpose program, which he's going to talk to us about today. So, Stef.
Thank you. Privileged to be here. So there's a presentation about grass. I understand that somebody from Amsterdam, so I don't know what that's going to be about, but I'm certainly going to stay here and listen to that. Thank you for being here. What I want to talk to you about. It's very high tech. Okay, now I can lower my voice. Very high tech. Thank you. So what I want to talk to you about is something indeed, well, I could say atypical also for Deloitte. As you might know, we're primarily always seen as an audit firm, accountants. We do a lot in consulting. We do a lot in corporate finance, so M&A kind of projects. We do a lot in tax. But I think it's also fair to say that, from a technology perspective, we do about 60% of our business is in some way technology related. So we're really also engaged pretty deeply in things like data analytics, business intelligence, etc., etc. And with that in mind, we initiated a short while ago a very, I would say, ambitious project to take a look at the refugee crisis and see, as Deloitte, what we can contribute to that. So I'm going to talk to you through that. It is a little bit atypical, but it is something I think that is very much in line with the kind of impact that we as an organization would like to make. And I guess this is the technology for switching slides. So clearly, I think whether what part of the political continuum you are, left or right or somewhere in between. I think I can say it's fair to state that the refugee crisis really does require our attention. I think what we're seeing right now, there's a lot of developments ongoing. Brexit, for example, last week. For a large part, I think also has been impacted by the discussion around immigrants into the UK, around refugees, etc. So no matter how you look at it, I think it's important to really provide some attention and try to resolve that any way I guess we can. That's also, I think, the position that Deloitte would like to make in that. And European countries are really struggling to get their act together. There's all kinds of political debates. Country A has a certain strategy, country B has a certain strategy, but we can't seem to get our act together. And ultimately, the only ones that are really impacted by that and suffering from that is, of course, the refugees. And I think there's very good reasons for that. The reasons why we're being very hesitant and very careful in addressing that. But I think at the end of the day, it's important that in some way we try to find solutions and we try to find, a resolution in a kind of coherent way. And that's what we're trying to achieve. The Connect for Purpose program, as we called it, really aims to kind of develop a portal and to look at the facts rather than the rumors that are going around. And I'll give you an example. When the Syrian refugee crisis started, there was a lot of discussions about the fact that primarily refugees from Syria were young males, aged between 25 and 35. And that's, of course, given the terrorist threat, giving security issues, that is a statement that once that hits the media, gives a certain I would say, emphasis on the refugee crisis coming from Syria and the stream of people fleeing Syria. If you take a little bit of a deeper look into that, it is the case that, especially at the beginning, there were a lot of young males among the Syrian refugees, but there was a very good reason for that. Fathers of young families, for example, found it too challenging and too dangerous for their family to automatically move at once and move cross-border and make this very dangerous journey, as a family. So a lot of families decided that, the father or the man would first try and find a way into Europe, and then the rest of the family would follow. So the fact is indeed that there are a lot of things accurate about the information in the media about this primarily being men, but there's a good reason for that. And those are the kind of things we as a project team that we've put together, and I'll share a little bit more details about that in a second, are trying to get to surface. What is the reasoning? What is really going on? So not look at the rumors, but distinguish that from the facts. And I think also if you look at the facts around the way countries are absorbing refugees, there's a lot of differences. So for example, if you look at Lebanon, of the 4 million people in Lebanon, 1 million are in refugee camps, are refugees, 25% of the population. If you take that as a given and you look at the way that, for example, a country like the Netherlands is looking at the refugee crisis, I mean, it kind of should be impacting the debate, I guess. Let me phrase it like that. So what we've done, we have mobilized, I think, a very impressive team. I think this is actually the first time that Deloitte as an organization really pulled something together, which is funded from our global headquarters, and is kind of rolled out across, initially, of course, Europe. Don't forget, there are in the world right now 60 million refugees. 30 million of those refugees are children. So this is something that's not going to go away. We have to really kind of find a way to deal with that. And that's really the position that Deloitte is taking on that. One of the things we've done in developing this portal is also to match organizations, companies, our clients, so to say, to the potential labor availability coming from the refugee crisis. And if you make that match, I think you have to know a little bit about job application processes, etc. And I'll come back to what that really means in a second. But we have in Deloitte last year had 1.9 million job applications. We also spend a lot of time on volunteer work and a lot of time on pro bono work. And I think that is something that we're seeing, more generically. It's really key for our organization to be kind of viewed also as such. A lot of young people, Generation Y, I guess. I think being 51, I can say young people. They are, of course, interested in a career. They are, of course, interested about having a nice lease car, but really also they want to make an impact that really differentiates and really is something that they can do for society. That's becoming more and more important, and I think that also resonates quite well with this project. Here in the Eindhoven region, there are a lot of high-tech companies. Companies like ASML, Philips, NXP, etc., Technical University Eindhoven, of course. And we have grouped, I would say, the 15 most influential companies in that high-tech space together in what we called High-Tech Competence Center. And we have a council that we put together. And that council actually came together on December 1st to talk about, okay, what could we do with technology and what could we do with data to kind of help in the refugee crisis. And this is how the Connect for Purpose started. So we brought a group of people, very influential people together, and we embarked on this journey. We're now 6-7 months later. I think it's fair to say we've kind of really gone a long way. We're not there yet, but I'll share where we are. An important aspect of this, maybe first we have a short video, and it would be good to kind of look at that, what it actually consists of, and then I'll carry on about the way we structured the project. So if you can play the video. Again, this is all very high tech, as you can see.
The main objective of Connect for Purpose is to empower refugees as they integrate culturally, socially, and economically as they adjust to a new home. Companies can utilize a fact-based overview of skills and talent available amongst refugees to find and recruit talent. Non-governmental organizations will act as a bridge between refugees and other ecosystem partners. Schools and universities can provide courses in e-learning while offering information tailored to refugees. The scientific data collection and analysis methods developed by Oxford University. Further insight will contribute to improved economic integration for the European refugee population. Local governments can provide information, resources, and services to help refugees settle and integrate into their country of arrival. At the heart of the ecosystem is an online platform connecting parties through next-gen data handling and user experience design. Refugees are themselves involved in building and maintaining the platform. Let's see how the platform will work for a refugee. This is Amina. She is a 27-year-old Syrian refugee. Amina enters the homepage and sees content from peers. In a video, a peer who is helping develop the platform provides a short introduction. Amina is struck by one quote on the homepage and goes to a peer's story about her experiences learning Dutch. Back on the homepage, she is asked to fill in a few simple fields to provide background on herself. The content is tailored to her unique situation. Amina enters the profile pages for companies such as Deloitte, Philips, and SAP. An employee volunteered to speak with refugees about the company. Amina sees a vacancy that interests her. She's excited about the opportunity to find a job that suits her. So what's happening at the company in the meantime? This is Mireille. She works in HR. She creates a company account and profile, then posts some vacancies. When later accessing the platform, Mireille enters a personal recruiter dashboard. She sees an overview of her vacancies and matches them to the company profile. She sees tips and information on Syrian people and hiring them. Mireille also created a page where employees can register as volunteers to help. This is not all the platform does. It also aggregates and provides transparency into information and data. Meet John. John checks the website to understand its content. The concept looks promising, so he joins the platform. A few days later, John has created several surveys and receives the results. The system links divergent research to create new insight. So that's Connect for Purpose. There's also more to it, like cultural information, advice on trainings and schooling, job application advice, peer pairing, and more. We're excited to be part of it, and we welcome everyone to join.
So I guess I think the initial kickoff setting is that we push this as Deloitte. We also are closely cooperating with SAP, and we're closely cooperating with Oxford University, who have a special part of their organization dedicated to the refugee studies, they call it. So we're working together to get not only the job matching, which is I think an important aspect, but in addition to that, also a lot of data fed into this portal, and that's being used also for research. We're also thinking about linking up to a lot of universities in the countries where we're going to roll this out to. That brings me back to this slide, where we really try to tackle it from what we call an ecosystem approach. I think Emil Aerts also this morning touched on that. This is something that we're seeing as a new business model instead of the traditional industry competency approach. We're really trying to deal with this from an ecosystem perspective. We believe that ecosystems are more powerful than companies, are more powerful than than governments. We can really make things happen in a much easier way than the traditional, for example, government of a country could do. And with that, we try to combine NGOs per country. So in the Netherlands, we are working together with the Red Cross, with War Child, with Save the Children, UNICEF, to kind of make this something that's valuable for those organizations as well. We have different, as I mentioned, academia. So we have different universities participating in this. Oxford, of course, from a research perspective, driving it in this phase, but we're going to really link into other organizations as well, other universities as well. I think it's also good to mention that our own Deloitte employees are working, for example, in running interview sessions, getting the data gathered, etc., etc. So there's a lot of value they can add in that process as well. And I think it's also fair to say that if you look at the, for example, the Syrian refugee population, there's very valuable skill sets available that we can use as well. The lady in this video is also somebody we hired as Deloitte, not because she's a Syrian refugee, but because she had she graduated from Damascus University, had a degree in accounting. So I think this is a kind of skill set we're really looking for in a more generic way. Anyway, so that's the way we try to tackle it. At the center of that is this portal we're trying to build. We're feeding it with all kinds of generally available data. So that's a big challenge. Where do you get that from? UNHCR, for example, loads of data that we can tap into. But we really need to also assess whether it's valuable and whether it's accurate. And so that's a pretty, I would say, sizable big data exercise already. As I mentioned earlier, 60 million refugees. We really need to be careful that this thing doesn't grow out of scope, very quickly. So what we did in the offset is said, okay, we're going to first focus on only the Syrian refugees. We're going to first only focus on what we call 3 destination countries, being the Netherlands, being Austria, and being the UK, all with their specific challenges, I would say. So that's the way we're trying to tackle this. And once we have this pilot, which we target to have finished end of December in place, we're going to then expand on it. Expand on it based on additional information, additional data, but also in terms of countries and also the locations where the refugees are coming from. The way we structured it, I guess, from a data perspective, is that we've set up 5 what we call use cases. So we have teams of people within Deloitte, and not only in the Netherlands, but also, for example, in the US, in Germany, in the UK, also in the Middle East, our offices there, working together to work on these use cases and make sure that they get accurate. The intention is to have, by December, as part of the pilot, 1,000 refugees go through that process per country, so 3,000 in total. Starting, of course, user case 1 is around personalized talent profiles, we call it. But that's also something you just get generic information about family settings, more looking also at what we call it, or what Oxford calls it, the economic value of refugees. Very often refugees are seen as a burden on society, a threat even. It's also only a cost. We try to also make sure that we understand what the economic value of refugees is. User case 2 is more around the organizations that can actually be interested in taking on board some of these refugees. And I think that's something that we found very encouraging, that already we have a lot of organizations who are interested in this, to tap into this and work with us from that portal perspective. NGOs, important. NGOs also have a huge challenge in making sure that they are acting coordinated. I don't think we can have the ambition to actually drive that coordination, but we certainly want to contribute to helping out in that any way we can. Research, mentioned on that user case 4, is really, what do we want to get out of this? And if there are certain areas that we don't have enough information yet, how can we mobilize our data sources to actually make that happen? And case 5 is also an interesting one, but it's something I think that's pretty generic, available already. But what we call the matching engine, which is making sure that supply demand come together, and how do we treat that? So that in a short overview is our Connect for Purpose program. I think we've really picked this up from day one in a very constructive way. It's not, as I started explaining, it's not a typical Deloitte project. It's really something that I think our organization sees as very valuable, and that's why we're making so much effort to make this a success. And I think that the success ultimately will be determined about the amount of data and the amount of connections we can make, anything related in this ecosystem I showed earlier, to connect all those dots. Connect for Purpose, it's a deliberately chosen name to make sure that we connect all those dots. We also, I think, have taken a pretty good decision originally to keep the scope down. Already it's kind of a challenge to manage this and maintain a certain progress. But I think that's something that it's fair to say is going quite well. We're going to be here at the booth. We're going to be here also for this entire meeting, the 2 days. So please reach out if you're interested in either ideas you might have, or if you want to contribute, or if you want to really connect into this initiative. We're really trying to make this as open of a project as we can. So feel free to reach out to this. And with that, maybe if there's any questions, I can imagine that there might be. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that collecting data from different sources. So you mentioned that you are also collecting data from different sources. So
yes.
I wonder if you also considered social media as a source of information. So what people are like posting, those refugees are posting in their profiles, Twitter,
yes.
whatever, or the other way around, what the Dutch people are saying about, so to have get a better image about, or have, like how to integrate those refugees in the society.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, that's a very good question. So social media, important aspect. If you remember in that ecosystem, there were what we call the organizations, international organizations, also component of that. So so our high-tech group in Silicon Valley has reached out to, for example, Facebook, has reached out to LinkedIn, etc., to make sure that we work already in this phase towards a model where we indeed can integrate that data as well. As you can imagine, and I think also that was in the presentation of Emil, it's breathtaking how many data lines are in those kind of applications. But we are trying to link into that, and we're talking to some of these key players in social media to also be part of this program, and that's looking quite positive actually. Good question. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi. In your picture about the ecosystem, I also saw something about the governments. I was wondering how they are involved at the moment in your initiative.
Yeah, so I think right now the way they're involved is that we are doing that through Oxford Refugee Studies. So Oxford, as I mentioned, has a specific faculty run by Professor Alexander Betts, really a subject matter expert, if you will, on the refugee crisis. And they work with governments as an organization already. So rather than us reaching out to governments and kind of reinventing the wheel, we're working through Oxford to start with, but hopefully also in the future with other universities as well, to tap into that important area of information. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Actually, as a follow-up of what you just say, are you aware of the initiative Humanity X in The Hague, the Center for Innovation of the University of Leiden in The Hague, and the activities of Cordate, which you have mentioned among the entities that profit from your work?
Yes, yeah.
So the whole The Hague ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, we're working very clearly also together with Constantijn van Oranje, who is as a person closely involved in that. We have several sessions that we had already talking to him about integrating all kinds of information feeds into this program as well. It's an important aspect of our job in this phase to make sure that we kind of embrace what's out there without jeopardizing the progress, because there's so much information out there. If you talk about big data, I mean, just an organization like UNHCR or a government or the initiatives that are going on in the Hague-Leiden region. So yes, the answer is yes. We're aware of that and we're including it. But no, we have not come to a final solution that covers everything yet. That's a work in progress, I would say.
Actually, to make it even more complicated, this is official since last week. UN has announced that it will move the data center of UN OCHA, which is the Organization for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, to The Hague.
Yes.
Just to make it more complicated.
Yeah.
So you will have direct access even to more data and a bigger ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think Constantijn is also going to be having a role in that new setting. So we're very pleased to have him on board. He's been very material, for example, also getting Singularity University to Eindhoven, and we're working closely with him and with his team to indeed make those connections. Yeah. Any more questions? Anyone?
I think you seem so optimistic, but this application is so complicated. You can jump over many steps. Those people, they can't do nothing unless they get the permission to stay.
That's true.
This is the essential point.
Yep.
They got the permission. What about the language? You got the language because Syria, the British Council worked very well, so all the people in the Arabian countries, they speak English well.
Yep.
Or they have the foundation. But their psychological state is destroyed. You are very, very optimistic, but I don't want you to be pessimistic. But those people, they came here alone and they left their families killed.
Yeah.
And I saw many, many of them. Father without his children, a lady without her husband and daughter. So how can we bring them to work?
Yeah.
This is the main obstacle.
Yeah.
And that takes more than 2 years until the people or the family to reconnect it, to be renewed. So this kind of optimistic thing is beautiful, but to be applied is nothing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, sir. I think it's a very complicated situation. Absolutely. I've been working with War Child, for example, as a volunteer for almost 10 years now. I know the dramatic setting. To give you an example, this lady that came over to work with us, initially, for example, they've had discussions. If you travel from Syria through, in this case, Turkey, via Greece to ultimately in the Netherlands, and you have 2 children, which child do you bring with you? Is it the one that can swim? Is it the one that's youngest and you can carry? It's very fundamental discussions that are ongoing, and we're really well aware of that. On the other hand, I don't think being optimistic or being pessimistic rather is the way to tackle this. I think you need forward power, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. And we work together very closely also with our Lebanese Deloitte organization, with our Middle East Deloitte organization, people who are literally on the ground working in refugee camps and absolutely, as you said, are aware of that situation. We don't, maybe my misinterpretation or my miscommunication about being optimistic is diluting the message. We take this very serious. We don't embark on these kind of projects if we don't think we can really make a difference. And for me, and people ask me that, it's a very significant budget involved. When is this project a success? I think if we can get one family through this program, in an integrated way in a European country, what's the value of that? For me, that's already then a success. But I think that what we are trying to accomplish is much broader, of course. But I absolutely hear what you're saying. Yeah.
There is a project, and this project is to interview each person of them and to arrange competence card. They call CC project, but I call it interdisciplinary. We don't want to match. We want to see each one of each individual of them, what is his skillfulness.
Yeah.
And then we're going to build offer that.
Yeah.
So we have to interview each one of them and to see each individual example and how can we work with him to be an active and useful and a pragmatic person in this project.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people with skill sets that are maybe not so high demand. We have in Netherlands alone, we have 2,000 children in our AZC's, in our refugee camps, or refugees organizations that are by themselves, so without any parents. So children who are here in the Netherlands don't know anyone. So there's a lot of complicated aspects to this. The only alternative we don't have, to my opinion, is to do nothing. So that's what we're trying to set in motion here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So the nature of this session is that the talks will be changing topic. quite dramatically as we go through, because it's the talk of new and emerging areas. So the next presentation will be from Fabrice Tocco around data markets, economics and data. So Fabrice is the co-founder of Dawex. He previously co-founded a company which became a world leader in the acquisition and sales in the tire sector, in the automotive industry. So over to you, Fabrice.
Thank you. So it was a tough topic just before me, so I tried to be okay. And actually the session is exotic, so I don't know if it was exotic previously. I don't know if we are exotic, but okay. The purpose of today's session was to talk about the data flow and the data economy. Yes, okay. Or is no. Next. Okay. So I have two studies coming from Deloitte and IDC that a lot of companies are going to start to sell data. A lot of them are going to also to sell data outside the companies themselves. So 30% of the company are already starting to think about selling data outside the company. So our previous company, we gathered a lot of data in the world regarding tires, and we became the worldwide leader in data acquisitions. But during this period, we have two key learnings, that there was no efficient tools to trade data, to have the ability to trade myself data. And the other learning was that many data producers were becoming data test sellers, data provider. So the thing is, in one side we have data providers and data buyers, and the two of them, they try to exchange data and to make money on that. So one thing is to have the data and to transfer the data, but that's not a way to make business. Well, if you want to make business with data, you have to attach a value to the data. But once you attach the value to the data, the other thing is what can I do with the data? So you have to attach a contract and a license on the data. And once you attach the contracts on the license or data, maybe you would like to trade the personal data. So with personal data, of course, you have those rules and regulations, and you have to take care about rules and regulations. So we are moving from the data transaction, the data transfer to data transactions. So data transactions is together data with contracts, with rules and regulations, and value, of course. And then once you've done that, you have to do it easily. It has to be secure because there is value. You have to do it fast because they don't want to wait a long time to get the data or to be paid for the data. You want to control who is the owner of the data, who's going to buy the data, to whom are you going to sell the data. And it has to be accessible to everybody, every kind of companies, big ones, small ones, whatever the industry and whatever where the data is coming from. And of course, to do that transaction, you need to get trust between the buyers and the sellers. Once you've got everything, there is another issue. You have to do it many times if you want to become a real revenue for your company. And if you want to have something that is not only a revenue for your company, but a real data economy, you have to get a lot of data providers for a lot of data buyers. Once you get everything, maybe you can create a European data economy and accelerating the data flow with this kind of data monetization. That's why we are creating Dawex last year. Dawex is a platform to transact for data transaction that gather all the things: security, contracts, value, trust. It goes fast as well, etc., etc. So then once you got a platform like Dawex, you need still to have some market conditions to make the data economy a reality. First question that a company, when we meet a company, they ask is what kind of data can I monetize? Can I monetize all the data? So we have three types of data. There's business data coming on from the IoTs or automotive, agricultural industry that we've seen previously on the agri-farm. That's all the data we can gather in a company. of course, you got the personal data with specific rules and regulations, which could be tricky to sell or to get money from that. And you got the anonymized data. Data is coming from the personal data, but it's not anymore personal because it's now without any rules and regulation on that. So then the second step is to help the data provider to fix the value of its data, because we are now in new market, and most of these data providers, when they are not professional of the data, so they don't know what is the value of the data. So basically, there are many ways to fix the data of the value of the data. The best way is to make to help the data provider to fix the data regarding what is the cost of the data, the value it could have from the data, and what is the expectation from the data buyer. The value could be either direct value, selling data directly, or having a license coming back to the data provider with an indirect value. Then we have to build the trust between the two of them, the provider and the data buyers. So the trust, first, the data provider has to be able to show the data, but he wants to show and protect the data. And the buyer, of course, he wants to see the data before he buys it. That's the first step. The second step is to have a clear vision who's going to be the buyer, who's going to be the provider. And then to create the trust is to see really who's going to be the ones going to use the data you can sell. So entity is trust. And of course, the contract, the way the buyer is going to use the data. So it's the way to fix the license, territories, usages, business sectors, durations, and maybe right to grants. So the data buyers will fix the license. And of course, once you fix the data you want to sell, once you fix the parameters of the license, we want to be sure that you will be paid. So the data provider needs to be sure that he's going to get the money from the data, of course, buyer. And then comes the time of the transaction. Transaction times, it's let's exchange euro against the data. And then euro and data, you close the deal with the contract of license and the rules and regulations if you sell personal data. That we call perfect data transactions. So we have been talking a lot of during these sessions about many jobs regarding the data, like collecting, aggregate, analyze, store, clean and predict, and other jobs. But one key issue to create a data flow is to make happen the transaction, and the perfect transaction on data. And the transaction of all data for every kind of industry, every kind of company, and the main thing is to get the deal transparent between the buyers and the providers. So here are some challenges, not all of them, to build a data economy. First is to clarify the ownership of the data. We have seen previously industries, farm industries, and still have issues on who is the owner of the data. Is it the user, the one who collects, or the one who analyzes? That's the first step. Then we have to invent new jobs like data monetizer, maybe data traders or data compliance officer, and why not data authorities. We have also to monitor the data flow between countries, between zones and continents. And why? Because data is becoming a gross domestic product. It will be part of the product of a country. And other things is to help small players to be more accurate on the data, because what we meet when we have customers, a small customer, they don't know how to handle data, how to sell the data. So they need to protect the data. They need to know how to get the ownership of the data. They need to realize that it's also possible for them to sell or buy data. Here are some common beliefs about data we'd like to tackle, and what we see frequently. It's sometimes every time we hear raw data has no value. That's false. The raw data has a value because it's the basic of the data. Only personal data has an interest. That's false. Also, you have many data in the industry that it's not only personal data. Selling data could jeopardize my business, which is not true. You just have to be able to choose who is going to buy or not your data. All data has a few value, which is not true also, because the old data, maybe it's rare and you cannot access any more to it. And data is not rare, which is not true also, because if you are the unique provider of data, of course, it becomes rare. So we have creating Dawex, which is a secure platform to monetize data, exchanging data, all kind of data for public and private organizations. So Dawex is done for to make a perfect data transactions, data payment, contracts, and rules and regulations compliancy. And we have additional services like helping to fix the value of the data, anonymizing the data, helping on researching data, and also on legal aspects, and prepare the data also. We have 3 use cases just to see you what happened in this new market, like medical biology laboratories. They sell data to insurance company, to pharma company, or other public sectors. In the automotive industry, we have a car dealer that sells a lot of cars a year, and he sells his data to insurance company, of course, automotive industry company, credit companies, and other retailers. And we have customers in the energy industries, apps for smart homes. They sell data to credit company, also energy providers, insurance company, and all retailers sectors. Here is some reference of Dawex. We have been granted with a new funding from the Caisse des Dépôts, French Caisse des Dépôts. And what we think is we have a global market with the financial market. We know that we have the commodity market with the global market. And the question is, does the data economy will be a global market one day? Thanks to the data flow and the valuation and the monetization of data. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Yes.
I have a question. I don't know how well you're familiar with the general data protection regulation that's coming out of Europe. And I was curious about to what extent do you see the new rights, particularly the data portability right, as creating any issues with regards to your data transaction model that you're proposing under Dawex?
So you are talking about personal data? Yes. No. So personal data is a very small part of the data you can trade, actually. We are focused. A lot of people are focused on personal data because it's touching people. But when you look at the market, the data market, personal data is a very small part of the data. So the rules and regulations in Europe are quite strong. We have built Dawex as a data privacy by design, privacy by default. So all the rules are inside Dawex, but not talking about Dawex, but the global market. What happened in Europe is it's a good thing for European people because the protection is very high. If you look at the worldwide level, you will see that in Canada they are starting to have this high level of protection. It's not the same case in all other countries. The level of the privacy and protection will go higher and higher, of course.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and I think that you're right that data will be part of some kind of economy in the future. However, I think that data is still special in a certain extent, and so data economy will be different from what we know from normal physical goods-based economy, because it's not true that there's something like data exchange, because data is never exchanged. Data is multiplied, but it's not exchanged because the one who sells data still keeps the same amount of data. So there's something special, and concepts like data ownership is also very, very problematic, because there's only very special kinds of data which really have clear ownership, or where data ownership can be clearly defined, like health data, because that's something where only my physical state is concerned. So that can be defined as being my data, but any piece of data that involves several persons, or things that have been invented, or something I say about someone else, does not allow for a natural definition of data ownership in some sense. So I think these points have not been clarified, and they will influence on the final shape of what data economy really is.
Yeah, it's a circle. If we introduce value on the data, people and company, they will take care about ownership. They will say, okay, if there is a value, and then where is the ownership? Then when there is the ownership, you can divide the value. That's the first thing. When you say it's not a market, I'm not saying that will be maybe a market like the financial market. The data can be unique. If you are a leader on the market, for instance, a leader retailer, and you decide to not to sell the data, your data as a leader on the market is not available anymore. So it's unique. Then you could decide also to sell it exclusively with exclusivity. So it becomes even more unique. And then the only thing is, how do you monitor? How do you check that the guy is not going to sell it twice or three times if he did it for exclusivity? So in that sense, what is missing today to create this data market? It's the ability to monitor all the data flow. If you create the ability to monitor all the data flow, then you can see if one data has been sold with exclusivity, and then if this exclusivity is respected. That's missing today on the market, or the data market.
Yeah, but still, you can write into a contract that the data has not to be sold to a third party, for instance.
Yeah.
But what if the data is joined with other data sources? Can you define all circumstances?
Yeah, it's the issue of the ownership. When you mix the data, where is the ownership?
Yeah, the problem is what I say is, whenever the data is further distributed, the value is lost. Yeah, it's some kind of entropy effect taking place, and
anyway, the market is not done today because tools are missing. Connection between tools are missing, and control also is not there. So the market is not perfect.
Yeah, of course. No. But all I'm saying is that there are some points which have to be thought of before it can really work.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And another point is, sorry to that, just one last point. You said you should know where the data comes from. Our experience, we're buying a lot of data. Our experience is that no one only sells one data from one source. In general, people there are cascades of data buying the data purchases, and you always get data joined with data from other sources, and it's very hard to know where the data ultimately comes from.
Yeah, but I agree on that. What we see also, it's you have an emerging behavior that everybody wants to be data provider. So you will have multiple source of data. Any companies in the street, even they're doing pizza. It's okay. I have hundreds, slots of pizza points in Europe, and I can sell data to another industry. So everybody wants to sell data. So you have many sources. So you will be able to access to direct sources that we can see today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Fabrice.
Welcome.
So we have our third speaker out of four, Peter Scheer. And again, we changed topic. So Peter is associated with the Haas University here and Amsterdam Arena.
Yes, indeed.
So he's going to talk about big data and Amsterdam Arena and everything that happens there.
Yeah. And I must apologize. My English is not that good, so help me, please. And another apologize. I'm not a data specialist. I'm a greenie. So I will teach you today how to make the turf grass green. So it's another cup of tea, so as Louis van Gaal told us. Peter Scheer, I'm working at Amsterdam Arena as business developer and also at Haas University of Applied Science. And there I'm the greenie. At Amsterdam Arena, I am building a green dashboard. And that's all about data. But our concern is how to keep the turf grass green. Because Amsterdam Arena is not only a football stadium, it's also last weekend we have Coldplay, we had Rihanna, we had the Toppers, who doesn't know them, but also Sensation coming weekend. And our goal is to make a complete growing system, complete controlled growing system. And that's not easy when there is a pop concert and then afterwards, 2 days later, we have Ajax or PSV, we are in Eindhoven now, to play a game, and then the next weekend there is Rihanna again. Because that's what is our goal, to keep it in control, to predict how the grass is going underneath the stage floor, because it's sometimes covered for 2 days, and then I have to make sure that it will grow and it will be green again after those 2 exciting days of an artist. Yeah. We are experts. That's the goal. It's a wannabe, because we are still learning about the turf grass. What is our goal? First at all, we want to be in complete control of the growing system. All parameters of how to grow the turf grass is for us very important. But at the other hand, we want to be a field lab. So we want to learn. We want to know how the circumstances are. We want to build formulas, and we want to spread the word. Because what is our third goal? We want to be expert, we want to be in control, but also we want to be a supplier of building information management. So because the Amsterdam Arena, for example, is one of the stadiums who has a roof. That is really very difficult circumstances to grow turf grass inside it. We have to compare it with the greenhouse, but then with lazy parameters, really crazy things, because it's no perfect parameters are in the stadium. Because the architect has no information about how growing turf grass. They built a stadium because it must be beautiful, it must be covered 60,000 people, and then at the end, if the building is finished, oh, we have to play in it. And that's really stupid. So our third goal is to provide information for architects to make a more growable stadium. So that's our third goal. So we aren't experts yet, but big data will help us to be the expert. Building information modeling, management I called it, data collection, interpretation, forecast turf grass, because our goal is, can we predict if there is a fungi in it? Are the circumstances that way that all the parameters will tell us, okay, the sun is shining, it's a little bit humidity, 80%, the wind is blowing from the left side, then we should be aware of that the grass is not growing that good anymore. So we want to predict, we have to have a forecast of the turf grass conditions or events, because I have to make sure that the plants, the turf grass is ready to be covered for 2 days and then have enough energy to grow again after a covering. Now, a step aside, the building information modeling system has more details than only turf grass. For example, now it's really actual. Sensation is going in the Amsterdam Arena next weekend, and we have the highest alert of how do you call it, security, because there are some rumors that there could be some terrorism add sensation. So that's a communication system that has all the data, can talk with each other. So that are also data aspects we have to cover in this system about how do you make the object that the security is okay, that sort of things. But back to the grass. This is the stadium. And now my green eyes will look, the grass is green. All the rights of the television are sold because of this color. It's a RAL color. And they pay for the, I don't think 1, 2, 3, 4. That is the color type. So that's really easy for us. The grass must always be color type X. Because that's the television companies will give us the most of money, because that looks fine when you are looking at home. That's a really good quality profile for us, but it's not easy to get it. Because we want to know how the humidity is in the soil on 2 places, because the roots of the grass, turf grass, are in the first 4 centimeters of the grass, or the soil. They must be growing to the 6th and the 7th centimeter to connect with the underlayer of the grass. So I need 2 sensors in the soil, one at 7 and one at 3, and we had some manual measurements on the top. And that 3 things will predict if the grass will be slippery or not. Because we have some sensors on the field which will blood knot temperature, that's Dutch. But it's the wetness of the leaf, leaf wetness. We measure that, but also we measure the influence of the 50,000 people who are breathing. Because moisture. Thank you very much. You are very helpful. But also the 50, if you have seen some soccer games at the halftime, then they are swiping the field because it's getting really wet. And that is something we want to measure, and we want to predict when it's going to be that wet, then it's getting slippery. And then, at the other hand, I want to arrange a system that if the data set is giving us these data, that it could be slippery, then I want to turn on the ventilation in the halftime to make it less moisture. Climate at the pitch level. Before the I have to look at the time, because otherwise they get to be angry. I'm half-time too, so be aware. We have some sensors on the roof. The roof, the weather forecast will tell us when it must be closed because there's a heavy rainfall coming, and then before that the roof will close. That's some detail. The detail is how many light intensity is on the roof, and how many will come on the top of the turf grass. That are details for us to fight with, to play with. Because that's the really nice thing about big data. At the first side we have the sensors. I'm not a sensor man, I have to talk with those who make them. At the other end I have the groundsman. The groundsman must treat the turf grass. And in the middle there is someone who does have to know about big data, about plant physiology, because he has to transfer the data. And I think this is the biggest issue also from this Congress. How do they going to talk with each other? Because we now have a team of technical guys, engineers, who make the sensors for us. We have the groundsmen who really know how to get the turf grass green. But in the middle, there is a big gap of tolk translators who make the story complete. And that's why I am here of Haas University also. I am the translator between the technical guys and the groundsmen. And that's really important. Now, hopefully this is... now, for example, at your left hand, we have some sensors digged into the soil. Those will give us the soil temperature and the soil humidity. Underneath we have a weather station with leaf wetness. In the middle we always measure the root length, so it's 4, 5 or 6 centimeters. underneath, in the middle, we have the leaf wetness and the CO2 carbon oxide and the light intensity. And that's part we have already. And now we are researching about plant activity measurements. So we have made a lawnmower, grasmaaier. Who helps me? Yeah, okay, thanks. We have implemented an Optrix meter. Jacob van der Borne uses it also in his agriculture, his potatoes, to grow it. But that's a measurement we can full field measure the plant activity of the turf grass. And now we're working on it, and it's not allowed, and that's the picture on your right underneath. That's our player following system, because now we are building formulas of following the players. And my goal at the end is to predict if, for example, Ajax will play against PSV over here, that the playing system will tell us, because we are following them, will tell us what the pressure on every piece of the playground is. So I can predict next day which maintenance must be done where. And that's the following picture, because we designed this dashboard, graphical. So we have some measurements at the left, but the middle is the most important for us. That's a screen. All the data per section of the field will show us. And now in this example, because it's a print screen, we provide data about the soil moistness on 2 levels. And it will give us signs when to make the irrigation. But it also gives us signs, because there were 2 times 9 sections. It will tell us which section needs the most of the water. So now it's doing by hand. Some section irrigation there is done, but it gives us a way to make it more precise. And that's, I will turn it back to the following system of the soccer players. For example, if PSV is having a good frontman who is running always on the right, and all the play is on the right, playing is on the right, we can make the maintenance more on the right. Some damage, we know the damage over there is definitely more over there than at the other side. We have some, in the dashboard, we have some details about direct maintenance. We also have an analyze tool, because at the back in the middle, we can put all the data, all the lines on each other to analyze, to see which trends are to be found, etc., etc. And also we want to know, and it's the calendar at the right, who is playing when, what preparation must be done. So it's also a system we can put data in it. It's measuring and sensors, but also the registration or plant protection, middelen, how do you call it? Dutch people help me. Plant protection stuff. We have some nutrients to be given. It's all detailed in registration, so we can analyze that effects too. If they give too much water, what will give the plant activity? If we give too less nutrients, what will be the effect on the plant activity? That's always our following system. I will help you to see what is over here. I have 2 minutes left. And I have 50 minutes to talk with you about. So I will do the next thing. What is now nice about the cooperation between Haas University and Amsterdam Arena? They also want to give advices at the end. For example, in Haas University of Applied Science in Venlo and Den Bosch, they have climate rooms. What we are doing, we take other data sets. For example, from Qatar, they want to build a new stadium. They want to see what grass is turf grass is the species, how this grows, how does it react on the circumstances in Qatar. Now, what we are doing, we take the knowledge of Amsterdam Arena. We take, for example, the weather forecast, the weather conditions from Qatar, and we put them in a climate room. So over here, we did some tests for Qatar. To see with the knowledge we have, We get it in Amsterdam Arena, the field lab. We put it in this climate room to see which light type, which species of turfgrass has the most successful growth in Qatar. The optimal, thanks. Come over here, help me. So the optimum conditions for growing the grass over there. So big data from Qatar will send to Venlo. Over here we do the measurements again, and we select the best light recipe, the best way of nutrients, the best species, etc., etc. Now, what we do, we want to make the best turf grass, so we need some lights. About the measurements, we measure all the things, and then we can tell the groundsman how many light hours will be needed to grow the grass the best. To make some holes in it, to make it more flexible, and we do all the measurements by hand and by sensors, so that will be perfect. I have 12 seconds left. Qatar, this was what we want in Amsterdam Arena is to follow in different stadiums, because I want to make a benchmark. We want to connect stadiums to each other to make big data help us to improve, because we aren't there yet, we aren't experts yet, but when more stadiums are connected at the system, we can learn from each other. So that's our goal in big data too. End of the presentation. Time is up.
So by my watch, we do have time for questions.
Oh, that's good.
Are there any? You have a question? Okay.
She's a PSV fan. Supporter.
No, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah.
I was wondering if when you have all this information about where football players run on the field, if you could also mine whether PSV players tend to attack on the right side and Ajax players tend to attack on the left side. If you can, for example, tweak the grass to be better on the left side or the red.
We aren't allowed because we may not analyze from UEFA and FIFA. We may not analyze the play. By training we can over now, but we can't make the analyze of the players on the right. And yes, we can make some wiring over there when PSV is going over there. We can, but we will not.
It's a promise.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my question. But in the halftime we can change our strategy. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's a fascinating story. The only question that came to my mind is there still a business case for this? Wouldn't it be cheaper just to replace the grass after a concert or after 1 month or so?
We do. Because once a year we replace it. But it's a really difficult area to grow the turf grass. So we thought about it. For example, Vitesse is moving their playground away. But then still they have to change it a lot. And what we want is, because it's costing approximately 150,000 euros to change it. And we can. But if we can, with cheap sensors, we can follow the growth and we can do the right maintenance, because we have to do maintenance every day. So if we have the data, the parameters, we can do it directly, and that gives us a better grip on the grass. And there's one goal I forgot to tell you, because we want to be in the top 3 of the best fields of the Netherlands, and the Kuip always wins. Why? Because we have a lot of pop concerts and the Kuip doesn't. So they are really focusing on the turf grass, and we are focusing on the multi-purpose goals. So concerts and growing turf grass, playing, having Ajax and our Dutch national team. Yes?
How can you control the changing of temperature?
We can't. So yeah, in Qatar we can. But yeah.
To plant this kind of material. But
So we know the temperature, we can measure it, so we have the other parameters we have more grip on. So we need, for example, if the temperature is 25 degrees, then we know it needs more light and more water and more nutrients because it's assimilating more. So that parameter we can't change, but the others we can, with the prediction and the real measurements, we can act on what we see with other parameters, but not the temperature, we can't. We're out of time.
Yeah. So we should stop there. So so the next time I watch a game at Ajax, I'm going to watch it in a completely different viewpoint. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks.
So our last speaker is Wesley Goatley. And so this session is about art, the intersection between art and big data. So Wesley is a sound artist, and he has an upcoming exhibition, one of several, at a large international festival that we will have in Milton Keynes. So over to you, Wesley.
Thank you. My name is Wesley Goatley, and I voted Remain. As did a massive number of people in my country. So when you Google image search the word data, you come up with a lot of this, if the next button was working, which it doesn't. Hey, okay. So you get green zeros and ones on a black background. Now, we all know that secretly this is what data looks like, right? And if it's not green zeros and ones on a black background, it's blue and white, zeros and ones. So at some point there was that shift between green and black and blue. And has anybody else noticed this? I'm sure there's a PhD in there somewhere. But as you keep going down this kind of rabbit hole of image search, which I think is a really interesting way to look at how a certain view of the world works, you also start to see various placements of bodies in the space. And they normally fit a certain mold, normally a male body, often kind of like a businessman looking deeply into the abyss of data, as here. These kind of like interesting abstractions that we have towards what data is and who it's for are kind of funny from certain perspectives and slightly worrying from others. And I'm generally weighted towards the latter because we live in a world where this happens. And this is taken from the leaked PRISM slides, the NSA's PRISM program. These are now actually quite old, and they were leaked in 2013 by Edward Snowden, showing that this misunderstanding that there seems to be culturally about kind of like this materiality of data, or the material components of what goes into our understanding of data, which are sort of weirdly abstracted, and we fill in with all these strange images and ideas. There's a real consequence to this kind of disassociation we have with it, and when you abstract or make sublime something like that, you kind of take the power away from yourself from it to some degree. And also, I mean, there's loads of other examples of this working out kind of in wider culture, like, for example, the questionnaire that was given to people who were asked whether or not they thought that bad weather affected cloud computing, you know, and just over half the amount of people asked, which is, I think, a sample rate of about 1,000 people, said that they believed that bad weather affected cloud computing. And these are people who almost certainly used cloud computing systems at that point in that day. By that, so I mean, there is a really interesting moment that we're in, I think, to do with our relationship to this thing we know as data. So I'm kind of interested in three specific elements of this. I'm interested in a few others, but these are the ones that keep jumping out at me. And the first point is provenance. So when I say provenance, I mean like not just who's ordained the data and who's authorized its collection, but I'm really interested in you know, what sensors are being used. Where are the breakages in those sensors? What do and don't they pick up? I think these questions specifically start placing bodies and materials into this idea of data, and those are things that we've got many more cultural tools to unpack. The second point is absence. I mean, we talk about volume, veracity, variety, you know, however many V's we're up to with big data now, 9, 12 V's or whatever it is. Big data joke. We're kind of obsessed with presence in data, I think, often culturally at the moment. I'm really interested in absence because the elements of absence in data sets are really fascinating and invite really rich questions. Say, for example, if you've got a smart city system and there's certain areas of the city that don't have any sensor data for, why? What's the thing about that district which means it's not being recorded or somehow missed from these systems? But also things like if you've cleaned out outlier results from your data set because you think maybe your sensor was broken in some sense, removing that from the data set prevents anybody from questioning that process and learning a bit more about the process that went into the data collection itself. And the third point where I'm really interested in is almost more of a philosophical one. It's about the difference, this notion of fidelity, the difference between fact and data, and how often those two things are conflated and how sort of dangerous that is. Because they're two very different notions, right? I mean, a fact is only a fact as long as it's a fact. Everyone still with me on that one? So, the world is flat, used to be a fact. It is now no longer a fact. If you have a piece of data about something that somebody questions or is later in some sense disproven, like maybe your sensor was in error, that, from a kind of ontological point of view, that data is still data. It's not changed what it is. But a fact is only a fact as long as it's a fact. And when those two things cross over, we're into kind of like dangerous territory about where these sorts of, about the faith that gets placed in data. And I think anybody here in information studies or cartography, and that's kind of like 101, right? That you question where this comes from and don't take anything to be like golden truth. So I think that there's an interesting corollary towards this particular cultural moment we're in, and also the history of scientific atlases. So Scientific Atlas, a big book with pictures of animals, plants on them, scientific description of that. This is a very long history of this medium of expressing scientific information, kind of, in sort of an encyclopedic sense. Pictures like this, where there'd be a scientist who was trying to describe something, and then there was almost always a separate artist who was trying to draw what the scientist was trying to explore in the book. And that tension between those two bodies is a massive part of the history of scientific atlases, that there's always this kind of fight between the scientist and the artist about what they're both trying to get out of the process. And also the difficulty of representing every type of the animal with one picture. You have to draw a picture that summarizes all of those animals for the people who are going to read it. Now, when photography came around in the 19th century, the scientific atlas community was like, yes, we've gotten rid of that kind of worrisome artistic subjectivity. Now we've got mechanical objectivity, right? It's like the camera sees all, doesn't lie, it's an object so it can't, blah, blah, blah. Whereas we've now had like 150 years to get used to photography, in that, almost all of us will now understand that as part of the photographic process, there's like the materials and the mechanisms of the camera that come into play, how the sensor was built, what the components are in the lens, but also specifically the point of view of whoever's taking that photo, that that reveals more about the person taking it than it does about the object sometimes. So we're kind of past that point where we conflate a photo with the notion of it being a true representation of this, wherever it's taking a photo of. And I feel like we're at that moment maybe with data as well, that there's so few of people in wider culture have got a real experience with the mechanisms of how to collect, generate, ordain, aestheticize, make perceptible data, that there is like a slight disconnect between our broad kind of cultural understanding and experience of the really kind of interesting materials of that process. So I'm interested in exploring this through both critical artistic practice and an ongoing research project that I'm involved with. And I call this critical data aesthetics. And really what that means is the kind of like reflexive, as in like you interrogate your own process of what it means to make perceptible data, when data in and of itself is kind of like a measurement or a classification, really, and it doesn't have a perceptible form until we store or organize or structure it in some sense. And then often after that point, we then visualize it or sonify it, if you lean that way. And so there's always layers of interpretation and bias that come into that are a very interesting process to engage with. So the first piece I want to talk about is called Familiars. This is a collaboration between myself and the technology anthropologist Georgina Voss. Now what this work did was look at logistical infrastructure, shipping. around the city of Brighton in the UK, which is where the piece was exhibited. It was a top-down floor projected map that you could kind of walk through. One of the elements that we were looking at in here was planes. So we were, planes broadcast their telemetric data, position, height, speed, that sort of thing, on the 1090 megahertz spectrum. We were intercepting this using like a 6-pound USB dongle and a 30-centimeter antenna. And our relationship, therefore, between the plane and the data was quite direct. And now around the installation space, there's a lot of text on the wall so that the audience could compare the view from the floor with this other information around them. And what it allowed us to make clear was that there are various ways of collecting data, and there's various kind of ways to black box the collection of data as well. And we were trying to make that as transparent as possible. So you had this nice live movement of planes, and you could see they had these tails coming off them that showed their trajectories, and they're constantly moving around the floor. We were taking the data and visualizing it live onto the floor. So another layer of that infrastructure, which you really can't see on this image, unfortunately, looks great on this little screen down here, though, is ships. So you've got shipping lines that run south of where we were looking at as well. Now, ships broadcast the telemetric data in much the same way, except that we were inland, so that those signals couldn't penetrate to us. So we had to get them via an API. Now, the issue with that is that the API only updated once a minute. So rather than this nice smooth, like live lines of planes around the floor, you had this shunting of once a minute, the ships would change position. Now, we kept that in, that shunt, rather than scale it out over a minute so it looked smooth. We kept that in because it provokes the question of why is that moving that way when this is clearly moving very smoothly. And in that, we got to invite discussion about the notion of the API as like a black box where you make a request to it and something happens and then you get data back out again, and what it means to think differently about those two forms of data at that point. And then a third level we were looking at is the train network. So in the UK, we shifted away from open radio telecommunications into GSM-based telecommunications a few years ago, which means that like any other cellular network, the train communications are now illegal for us to intercept and decode because we're not the intended recipients. So all we could do was see on a radio graph when that signal was being used, when that channel was being used specifically, that created a peak. And when that happened, we raised up a kind of a bright map of the surrounding rail network. Now, compared to all the rich data that was coming off of the ships and the planes, this was very sparse. And it was particularly interesting because in terms of our experience and access to that form of logistical infrastructure, trains are the closest one to us, both physically and in terms of how often we engage with it. But conversely, we had the least amount of access to it. So another piece is the listener. Now this was sonifying, is an installation that sonified probe requests, which are a kind of a discrete component of Wi-Fi technology. The probe request that your phone sends up to about 10 times per second actually gives a lot of information about your location, who you are, where you've been. It's a very interesting way that the Wi-Fi functions. So this piece was sonifying the sound of your unique MAC address, your unique identifier for your phone constantly. But in this central piece, there was a laser-etched box where printed onto all the sides of the box itself were things like all the software and hardware on what was actually running the experience you were kind of in the middle of. And the screen and the computer in the middle are the elements that were running that experience. And then the other planes on that box said things like what the probe request was and who the IEEE are, who are the people who maintain the Wi-Fi protocol that we use every day and inevitably ordain why it works that way. But also there was another view you could take. So while you listen to this data, you could read this external box, but also look through to see how the data occurs to the operating system. So there was a small screen inside which showed the line-by-line output of how the operating system was translating that data. So you've got all these various layers of legibility to invite further reflection on. Now, the last piece I want to talk about is ground resistance, which is an upcoming work, again, with Georgina Voss. This is going to be at the Milton Keynes International Festival in 2 weeks' time. And this is looking at the burgeoning smart city system of Milton Keynes and what a data view of the city looks like. But specifically, the parts of the city that we don't have any data for. This is another top-down projection, so you've got a projector up high making a big 4-meter map on the floor you can walk through. Now, the elements of the city that there are not data for, we're actually going to be using cut-out objects that hang in midair and cast a shadow onto the floor in the shape of the space of the city that's absent of data. So that as an audience member, you kind of have to negotiate this absence that's drawn onto the floor kind of quite physically, drawing that attention rather than just kind of going, oh, look at this, the kind of bright lights that you often get in data visualization, sort of something that kind of feels like it gets in the way of that a bit, kind of problematizes it, is a very interesting approach, I think, and one that I'm hoping is going to have impact in terms of the way we think about absence of data. So, sort of to conclude, I don't think then any of these artistic gestures have to stay in art. They're not. I don't think they're necessarily artistic in and of itself. I think that anybody who works in making data perceptible, if you work in data visualization, for example, we all have the opportunity to kind of to start pulling or using techniques that allow for this wider cultural view to expand, especially if your organization's interested in open data or transparency. I think we've got maybe a responsibility, we can think of it as, to improve the sort of our broader cultural understanding of what data is. But also to kind of safeguard against the future exploitation of that data through kind of self-knowledge, rather than allow for that to kind of for some of the horrific things that have come out from our lack of an eye on where our data is going that's happened so far. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone? So I have a question. So one of the things we talk about. One of the things we talk about is storytelling and narrative. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about that from an artistic point of view.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that there's an interesting cognitive way the narrative works, is in a kind of a linear route. I do think that the notion of digital storytelling is one that makes me wince a little bit, because I feel like it gets deployed in kind of quite dreadful circumstances sometimes, because you're really trying to orate to somebody rather than tell a story in many ways. But I think there is interesting ways to think about how we can make narratives that are non-linear, or perhaps allow the participant, observer, listener, whoever you feel like this person is that you're making this thing for, allow them to kind of take paths they want through it. I think that we've got a lot of opportunities now to make kind of multifaceted visualizations that allow for a great number of views to be seen.
Right. And then I had a second question, if I can. So my second question was on. So one of the effects of what you're doing is raising awareness in non-experts, which is a great thing. Have you ever thought about or had any thoughts around the relationship to explicitly teaching the population, or maybe young children, about aspects of data?
I think that because what I'm really interested in is socio-technical knowledge, rather than say the skill to code, which I don't think is essential to understand what coding can do. I think that socio-technical knowledge is really essential, or I'd like it to be seen as something that's essential, because we interact daily with so many socio-technical systems that are quite kind of opaque to us. And again, this notion of the black box keeps coming back up again about, for example, I'm taking this from the artist Julian Oliver, who made a really good point about this, that most people can't open their phone and show where the numbers are stored, for example. So we rely upon these technologies that we have very little kind of critical interaction with, and I think improving that is a big part of developing this kind of knowledge that I'm interested in.
Okay, so then I propose we close this session and thank all the speakers. Thank you very much. So, yeah, I was just thinking there's something going on afterwards. I can't remember what it is. So, so we now have refreshments, and these are all in the same location, just out there, downstairs. So refreshments until 6:15. There will be an award ceremony. Then we have a quiz, I guess an English pub type quiz on EDF for an hour, and then there's a walking dinner and barbecue where the weather's okay, so we'll be walking outside and inside. Yeah? And then we close at 10:15. Thank you.